Hey, welcome back to the Dynasty Grind. My name's Peter Howard at PA Howdy on Twitter. This is a live stream that goes out onto the DLF YouTube feed and also mine and also my Twitch. I don't know. We do it every Wednesday at 9:30. Have done for over a year at this point, where we answer any and all Dynasty questions or comments that you happen to drop in the little comment box on whatever streaming platform you happen to be listening to, or we just talk amongst ourselves in the off chance you don't have any of those. Welcome back. This week we don't have Dynasty Outhouse from the Trade Addicts Network with us. No explanation. He just said, no, I don't think I'm coming. But we do have Zach Reed from the Dynasty Dummies and myself. So yeah, let's get to it. Let's have some fun thinking, talking about sleepers, I guess. I don't know. It's the only Dynasty buzzword I could think of that I hadn't used yet. Hey, how's it going?
Unless you're talking about footy pajamas, I'm not discussing sleepers.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, sleepers kind of suck, but it's just a generic term applied to players at this point. That
to me, we're at a point now where it's the saturation of analysis is such that there aren't sleeper. Like there are situations that pop up. But the players themselves, like, it's really hard to find a sleeper. I feel like the closest thing we've had
I don't think there are sleepers. I think there are players that people are drafting below where you would rather, where you would get hesitant to draft them, and so we call them sleepers. You know?
Yeah, like
or draft them, trade them, whatever.
James Robinson may be like the last sleeper. Like we could do the last sleeper, and James Robinson from nowhere who got an opportunity when Fournette went down, and all of a sudden, he did great for you.
James Robinson becomes a question, and I don't think there's an answer. So whatever.
Well, no, we
can't.
I was. Oh no, I say we don't know until somebody gets hurt.
Yeah, I was just updating rookie ADP actually, because we actually have May Superflex ADP at this point, and looking at the new draft board based on ADP. Gibbs is above JSN, for example.
Yeah.
Well, Levis is a mid to late first round pick up under ADP. So the things we were arguing about was really amongst ourselves. ADP was already doing it, I'm pretty sure. It just hadn't updated. Chris Gifford. Hello, gents. Great cast. I agree. It is better when Dynasty Outhouse isn't here. I will tell him you said so, Chris. Appreciate that. He was actually here before we started, so he didn't know. Randy Wyatt. Good evening, folks. Hey, Randy. Hey, Chris. How you doing? Randy asks, a 14-team PPR non-tight end draft. He had the 102. He got Bijan Robinson there, apparently. The 104. JSN at 106. Addison at 108. A-Chain at 201, and the 207 he got Roshan, Boudet at 305, and Schoonmaker, whatever, 310. I think you could have done better with that 310, but I don't hate it. How'd I do? I think you hit exactly, the marks we'd expect, and I like the players you ended up getting. So, outside of, everything's better if you just trade for more draft capital, I think you did perfect, man. I like this a lot. You didn't get down, so you're losing. But other than that.
Yeah, but I mean, you get JSN and Addison in spots where we're really happy to have them. So I like it, Randy. That's not a bad. And then you see he traded Bryce Young for Kupp and Dobbins, which it's probably the values on the Young side, but
I guess it's a super flex.
The risk is all on the Young side too. So
yeah, I'd probably rather Young, especially if it's super flex, but I don't hate it. I don't hate on it. J.K. Dobbins is a big trade target for a lot of people right now.
Yeah.
He's a running back, so I don't care. But
I mean, I like the Cooper Kupp. Just getting Cooper Kupp makes me happy because I think he's going to be Cooper Kupp again at least another 2 years. So
yeah. I added him on competitive teams like right after the season, and it's still been a pretty good ad. Thoughts on late rookie drafts? And I think he means rookie drafts as late as possible. In general, I don't care when a rookie draft is. I think we over-exaggerate, like as early as possible, so I get an edge. Then just everyone does their work a little early. I don't think there's a way of catching an edge that way. I like after the rookie draft because that's when all the signals in and I'm ready to make my decisions. But honestly, wherever it is, I'll make decisions on the best information available. So it's whatever you like. I would say, and I think you say this a lot too, Zach, everyone, especially with drafts, especially this time of season, everyone's in too much of a hurry. Because the minute it's done, you just sit on your hands for 3 months. I mean,
we want to have a rookie draft. We want to have a rookie draft, and then your rookie draft is done. And people hurry you on the clock. Oh, hey, you're on the clock. I'm like, I got 7 hours and 53 minutes. It's an 8-hour timer. I've only been on the clock, and so it's that like hurry up. So I don't mind having a late rookie draft. I actually have my home league draft next Saturday, not this coming one, but the next one, the 3rd. And I'm excited about that, but I also wouldn't mind having one in August. I don't think there's a bad time to have a fantasy football draft. Like I don't.
Later we go. The more chance you have of catching the Damian Pierce or the running back that finds opportunity because of the preseason. But, it doesn't matter that much to me. It's whatever. It's fun for you. Traded Kamara for a 25 first.
Wow.
I think you're doing pretty well if you get a first out of Kamara from any year. So.
Yep. Even if it's a 25, we're happy.
Oh, yeah. 25 is where we're shopping for picks at this point, generically, I think. 24 picks for last year. Same league for Randy. His starters are Hurts, Bajor. Well, those are his starters. What do we think of his team when it looks like this?
I think good team in a 14
off the top of my head.
In a 14 team,
you got 14 team.
Yeah, you got 2 of the top 5 quarterbacks. You got the running back one and another serviceable top 24. And then that's a good looking squad.
I would say this is a shiny thing squad, though. You've got JSN, Burks, Addison, Bateman. They're all hopes, and I have hopes for them. I like them a lot. I like them better than average, but you can't say they're definitely points because we know we can be wrong. We think they're right, but we know we can be wrong. It's not like you've got a lineup of CD and Amon-Ra and Waddle. It's not this team's going to the playoffs and should win.
Well, I mean,
it's
Chase and Cup is
the value.
Good.
Yeah, but you got 2 in a 14.
I mean, Chase Cup in London as your wide receiver 3. I'm okay with. Goddard as your tight end. I'm okay with. You got 2 running backs, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 starters. How many guys are we starting? Like that's a pretty solid lineup.
Well, how many guys you're starting is the idea, but I think in a 14-team league, you've at least got 3 other teams who are as competitive as you when you look at those players. When you look at the 5 players who are really solid, right? Yeah, well, actually, Herbert and Hurts are, beyond solid, and so is Cup for this year. But, I just like to keep my eye on the fact that my hopes and dreams aren't actually points yet. And so I don't want to rush all in on points, for example, like buying running backs. Like right now, you've got David Montgomery, which is great. He's a starter for you this year. But if you get a good trade on him, I'm not scared. And you just traded for J.K. Dobbins, I think, because you feel competitive. But that's easily how that value bleeds out because, Addison gets hurt year 1. Or London's on Atlanta that can't figure out how to target its best weapons. And things beyond your control can make you wrong. And so I wouldn't bleed any more value into points players until we see a little bit of resolving or a few trades into Waddle, into Amon-Ra, into CeeDee Lamb to secure points for this season. So you're still in that. It looks really good. Team's looking good, but you're not an outright winner yet. So, just keep your eye on it. Don't bleed too much into the I think David Montgomery is going to ball this year type of decision. But that's a very small point, to be fair. It's not like I'd move mountains to follow it. Gazuk, 1 QB, half point PPR. Would you trade Jameson and possibly 3 24 firsts for Garrett Wilson? 3 firsts and Jameson for Wilson? That's actually too much, but I guess Wilson's the side I want, and I'm not scared to overpay for the players that I know I should target. But this guy's honestly a little insane. He's like, give me everything I want for the good player that I have. Is a little, Garrett Wilson can't win a league by himself. I need other players, and you're asking for everything. So I think he needs to chill a little bit. He either needs to let you keep Jameson Williams or keep one of those firsts at minimum.
Yeah,
that's my opinion.
Yeah, the 3 firsts and a player feels like you're going after a top
Like,
four quarterback.
That's Jefferson. That's Chase. That's quarterback. That's not, what's Waddle, what's CD, what's Amon-Ra. They're top 12 wide receivers as well.
Yeah,
and young.
And again, that's not to say that we don't want.
Yeah. Wilson's the side I want in that. It's just, exactly. Yeah, play the value. Juwan Johnson, McBride, Higbee. Those are names of NFL players. Yes. I feel like I missed something. The first would be trading away is not mine and likely a top 3 pick. I also have a 24 first.
Hold on. I thought it said 3. I thought you said 3 first. It said top 3 first for Garrett. So 1 first. Okay. And that's fine. That I would do. Yeah, that I would do. I'd rather have Wilson. Even though the top 3 first is like that's a steep price. I mean, and there are some good quarterbacks coming out in this next class. And
it's 1 QB, so it's not even
a solid receivers. I mean, you're talking Marvin Harrison Jr. ought to come out next year, but still, yes, I would make this play for this year for Garrett Wilson, especially with what you've got with Mahomes, Bijan, Dobbins, Swift, Gibson, Madison, Chase. Yes, I would do that.
Definitely. I read it wrong. Must have. It starts 7 as well, so you want studs.
Yeah, and he comes in and yes. My guess is starts at some point this year with like the Keenan Allen, like right in that Keenan Allen range. He probably is your backup plan for Keenan Allen, Cooper Kupp.
My only hesitation is what other trades are possible. Like it's a start 7, so Wilson's he's in the right range, but you really think Chase, Jefferson are the ones that swing your league, Wilson's more on that CD or Waddle, Amon-Ra category.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for being here every week, guys. I mean, where else will we be, really? I personally have no life. So, is this your primary source of income? No.
Yeah, I am a marine engineer for the Navy. So, what's up?
Just serious sounding. I used to teach college. That department closed down. I kind of just been working odd jobs ever since. That's my main source of income right now, believe it or not. I'm kind of in a holding pen. Fantasy has come to a point where it's paying a few of my bills, but not this stream. This stream literally pays us nothing. But we have fun, and I like hanging out with Zach and Russ and talking to you all. So, Jameson we're back.
Yes, we got there, Gazerg. It took us a minute, but we're there.
We're slow.
Literacy is a big thing.
You get what you pay for, literally. Hunter, what's your opinion on Jacoby Myers for Dynasty? For value, zip, 0, nothing. Look if you get a second. For value on my roster, I'm going to hold it. I like having Jacoby Myers quite a lot. What do you feel his ceiling is? We've seen his ceiling. And that's the best way to approach players when you've seen them hit peak usage as well. He's a top 24 wide receiver. He had that one weird year where he couldn't score touchdowns, which is unlikely to occur too often. But he's a Tyler Boyd type. He's a top 24 is a category I usually put him in. He's not going to win you a league, but he's easily a value for the points that he scores. He's going to be a regular top 36 starter for you. I think even on his new team. I like him a lot. He could go the route of Hunter Renfrow because those guys are kind of undervalued in the NFL, especially with a lack of draft capital. But I like having those players I know that can do it, and it's just about the NFL, getting out its own way because situations change and good players ultimately, I hope, find other paths to opportunity. So I like him a lot. As far as dynasty value goes, again, zip, nada. Don't put him in a trade. Don't ask for him in a trade. You're going to pay too much to get him on your roster if you know to value him, and you're not going to get what you need back. It's kind of if they put it in a trade, you're happy. But or if you happen to pick him off the waiver wire, like a lot of us did in some places. Zach, am I too far off on that? I don't think there's any more upside than we
I think that's spot on. Good. He's the player that you're very happy with if he's your wide receiver 4 on a team, but you're really concerned if he's your wide receiver 2, and he's probably like a wide receiver 3. And if you're there, you're like, It's okay.
And he himself, real good NFL player, has passed to fantasy relevance. It's not like one of those real good NFL players that never really starts for you. He's like a Zach Pascal, Kendrick Bourne plus. There you go. Or a Jarvis Landry minus, or a Tyler Boyd minus, because of the draft. My Marvin Harrison lottery ticket. Yeah. I don't know what next draft class looks like, obviously, but from the 100-mile view, I'd be surprised if Harrison falls to third based on where the landscape is right now. But again,
especially not
the running backs,
especially not in a one quarterback. In a one quarterback, he's
probably the 101.
Yeah.
When we feel that way about certain that's what we do. You know. Running backs are the only things that could push him down, and Bijan Robinson's in this draft class, so we're okay. Chris Gifford, gents, what's the most you would give up for Patrick Mahomes in a super flex? There is no. Mahomes is in that tier of players where there is no price. It's just what the other person is willing to trade him for. So it's very league dependent. Like there is no price that's too much, but there might be a price that's too much for your team in that league. That honestly, that's where I'm at with Herbert. Even Allen, and I think Burrow and Herbert, Mahomes and Allen are in that tier. I think Herbert and Joe Burrow are kind of in there because they got too much hype and they're also too good, and people are going to value passes over rushers for the foreseeable future, and they got swag too, so that's nice. Hurts and Lamar should be in that tier, but aren't really, and they're all of a type. Like Travis Kelce, if he was 4 years younger, would be in that category as well. But outside of that, Jefferson and Chase are kind of in that category as well. There's no real price. There's just what you can possibly get them for and if you can afford it. But generically, no player should be worth more than 3 first-round picks within a year. Like 3 picks within 2 different draft classes.
Yeah, and I think that generically, that's where you start off is 3. Like, it's 3 firsts.
And if you have a pick from this year, it better be a top 5, or then that's where you're at. They need to replace their quarterback, so that's what they're going to need.
Yeah, and to me, it's easier. It's easier to get value with picks like leading up to a draft. So like instead of us knowing. So if you're trading for Mahomes, it would have been better to do it at the end of last year before we knew where the picks fell. Because as soon as the picks fall and the rookie draft happens, or the picks fall and the NFL draft happens, now you know exactly, all right, this is the range that you need to be in to give up Mahomes. Whereas if you're trying to get Mahomes, it's better to get it. It's better to make the trade with the 3 picks that are really nebulous, because you might end up getting some value there because the picks may not be top 5.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's
a trade like that's just kind of, it's wild to see one in the wild. It's because that team is building and just has to sell off, or because they don't really value him the way I just described, which is, I think, how people should value him. And instead they think, wow, I can build my roster with this one trade. And that's not how I would view it, but it's a good thing to take advantage of. I mean, if you've got someone in your inbox saying they're interested, I would explore it. And honestly, there's no price too much, except for being too much for that team that you roster. Because if you give up everything for Mahomes, you have to immediately trade Mahomes to go get other things, and it's just counterproductive. There was no explanation. To be fair, I didn't ask. I didn't want to pry. I assume he's spending time with his family. We've all got a lot going on this time of year. Summer coming in and stuff. So he's spending time with people that he loves. And I don't want to make him explain that. He doesn't have to be here. He is also unpaid. So, that's awesome, Zach. I used to...
nice.
Used to close repeaters until fiber optic telecommunications that run across the floor of the ocean. That's cool. Sound job too. It does help when I stretch one question out over 7 messages. It does help, actually. It gives me more things to click on. I've got something to do. You know, I'm happy. I'm happy if I'm busy. Rambo, 12-team Superflex tight end premium, start 10. Wide receivers are Garrett Wilson, Amon-Ra, Hollywood, Juju. That's as good as I've got. Dotson, Jameson, Williams, Addison, Dell, Downs. I like a lot of these guys. Don't get me wrong. Got offered Deontay Johnson, who's definitely a target right now. For Williams, straight up. Jameson Williams? I don't know. It depends where your taste lie. I like the player who's done it a couple times. He's got lower draft capital, so he's definitely in my camp. But Williams has the upside. Again, we've kind of seen what Deontay Johnson can do, which is sometimes empty targets, like empty calories. We like targets, don't get me wrong, but sometimes they're empty, especially when Kenny Pickett in charge of them. And I like rostering him for his floor. I think he's good. I think he's going to play another 3 years being good. But Jameson Williams he's basically a rookie starter this year, and he had a decent college profile. So he's got a lot more in his range of outcomes, and he's younger. So looking at your team, I don't think you need Deontay Johnson. Jameson Williams is probably the better person to hold in your roster or trade outright for draft capital. But I like Deontay Johnson a lot, so I wouldn't be mad at anyone that made this trade. Outside, you're breaking every rule. You're trading into an older player with a lower floor on a team that doesn't need them, and you're doing a same position trade for a thing that you don't need. But it's your team, and I don't think you're getting a bad player, so I'm not particularly upset about it. But it wouldn't be the type of trade I'd sketch out to improve my team. But you can also roster another player that you like. I don't hate it, but I would say no if asked in a vacuum, or asked like this for that matter. Yeah. Those are my thoughts.
No, I agree. I think that Jameson Williams, even with the suspension, even with the injury from last year, still has that potential ceiling, the potential to be worth more than Deontay Johnson in 6 months. And so I think that's, and not that we don't like Deontay Johnson, because I think Peter and I both do, but I think you said that. I like him a lot. I think you said that really, really well with the empty targets, and especially with Kenny Pickett at the helm. I am nervous for the Pittsburgh offense.
I mean, good players come from bad quote-unquote offenses all the time. Deontay Johnson has done that several times, so I'm not worried. Wow. But I also don't go to the other extreme. Like, if he gets a better quarterback, I'm like, now he's CeeDee Lamb. No, he's Deontay Johnson still.
He was good on a bad team, but not on a bad offense. Like, Roethlisberger was still throwing 600 times and scoring touchdowns, and I don't think Pickett is going to do either of those.
Okay, I'm working with a limited English vocabulary. Okay, I got 2 words for things, good and bad.
English is a second language. That's my fault.
There is no gray. Having said that, looking at your team, again, I'd say the other thing, as I said for that last team, this is a great team. I would love having all these players, and I'd feel real confident about my team. But again, just despite that, you're in a whole bunch of, I like these players, I need to see something. Same thing with Jameson Williams and why he has so much potential. One game, one of those 100-yard and touchdown games, which is kind of the way he played in college and what I expect in the NFL, you immediately have these options where you can suddenly improve your team dramatically in different directions by trading into running back or tight end or just getting draft capital. Whereas Deontay Johnson's probably still going to be viewed as Deontay Johnson right now, no matter what he does, even though I think he's still going to be pretty good. And a lot of your players are like that. Jameson Williams, Addison, Dell, Downs. I like these players. Shaheed, I don't care about, but whatever. You do you. So just keep in mind that you're waiting for some opportunities. You're not rolling into the final already, which is fine. Most teams should keep that view. But the closer we get to the season, the more I want to point out good rosters right now are just good rosters. And unless you have locked-in studs, like, again, the players we have no questions about, even though reality can disagree, Jefferson, Chase, even Amon-Ra St. Brown and CeeDee Lamb and Barkley and CMC, we know who the studs are. We shouldn't project those ceilings for the players that we like. We're hoping to see opportunities for them to improve our team continually moving forward. So, yeah, don't make too many points trades, just as a general rule. The Freak, although this year it's the best year to do it. But anyway, the Freak, get a second on top and give him a third back. Yeah, you kind of have to imbalance it some way. Like, what advantage are you getting if it goes your way, kind of a thing? Because you've got the floor. You've got Deontay Johnson. And that's, you're getting 140 targets. They're Kenny Pickett targets, but there are 140 of them, Lance took every first team rep, went 12-17. Yeah, I'm avoiding most of that stuff, the whole off-season report thing. I can't help myself sometimes because it's the only news we get. But it's like a Rorschach painting, right? You can see anything you want to see in all of those reports. And mostly they're trying to represent every player's positive. Every player's going to win the job, even if they're playing for the same job. Tua Tagovailoa looks a little heavier than he did, and that can be good or bad depending on what you already thought was going to happen. It's Eddie Lacy, or it's this guy's not going to get hassled in the pocket anymore. We don't know. The best we've got is previous production to predict future production, and we already knew that. It's a lot of fun. Don't get me wrong, but I mostly don't listen to it. But it is nice to see that Lance is getting back. It's always nice to see a player getting back on the field when we had questions about him doing that. Hunter, if you are the Christian McCaffrey owner, is it worth trading your Rashad Penny for Elijah Mitchell?
No.
I don't think it's a bad move. In Dynasty, handcuffs are different than redraft. I think it makes more sense to handcuff your running back in Dynasty. To John Hogue's point, there's less waiver potential. And it's something I say at tight end as well. But if there is an edge to be gained, it's in not doing that. It's a small edge, but it is the only place there's an advantage. So why handcuff yourself? Because that's what you're doing. You're not handcuffing him. You're handcuffing your own roster potential. But again, at the same time, John Hogue, DLF ranker, he knows what he's talking about, or is meant to at least. Content creator, playing in leagues. I've seen him win leagues. I've seen him do very well in leagues. He's no dummy, and he prefers that. He just prefers not having to worry about it. And you can play like that too. It's fine.
The edge is to go trade somebody like Devontae Parker, Darnell Mooney, or one of those guys on the end of your bench that's a receiver for Mitchell. Keep Penny.
That's another good, yes.
Like that to me.
Try and have your cake and eat it too.
Yeah,
what a good
Hunter.
idea.
The way that I tend to play the back end of my bench is try to identify the wide receivers who are roster cloggers, because a lot of times those are the players that are, and if I can use them to go get running backs who. Both Penny and Mitchell, if something happened to the player in front of them, have potential to put up fantasy viable weeks, running back 1 weeks. So I want both of them. And I'd rather go make a move with somebody else to go get Penny or go get Mitchell than I would give up Mitchell for Penny or Penny for Mitchell.
And just in case, I figure everyone knows because it's been out there a while, but just in case you don't know, the reason you roster other people's handcuffs is because you're handcuffing your roster, literally. If you lose your stud, falling less or not falling as far by having their backup still means your team gets worse. Right. On the other hand, if we game theory it out, by rostering someone else's handcuff, if their stud goes down, your team gets better, which means there are more paths to your team improving in potential points and points per game for that season if you roster someone else's. By rostering your own, you're locking yourselves into no net value or a value loss. Those are your only two options at that point, which again feels better. And I think in redraft it could make potentially slightly more sense, because all that matters is the point. So if you fall slightly further, then your advantages at other positions can still fire off and win. But in Dynasty, it doesn't work that way very often. And you have no way to rebuild after that. So at least if you have someone else's handcuff, you can try and trade it up for a second. Fingers crossed for Lance. I actually would like to see him come back. We saw a hell of a 5 games during the end of that one season. We've got questions to answer. Not that we'll have all the answers if we saw him play this year or see whether he can earn the job full time this year, but we'll have more, and more information is better. Him just continually being a what if, I think would be terrible. And also, I'm just always kind of rooting for players to get their shot. I think he will. Rounder 77, 1 QB. This is his team. Would you go for it this year with this team? This year is a really good time to go for it for any team, but it is, generically the best Dynasty advice is to not make a decision, and it's to just keep playing value. But let's take a look. You have good running backs, especially with Bijan Robinson and Hall and ETN. So you got a clear stud. It's a start 9 league, 1 QB. Your wide receiver is still a little too hopeful.
And you got to start 3. But you got to start 3 wide receivers. I don't think you're quite there.
You don't have an advantage at tight end either. So yeah. A simple way I think about this is: are you beating your league with a positional advantage in 2 different spots? And at 1 QB, you're not. Lamar could be that, but the edge in 1 QB is worth going for. As Zach Reed talks about his other Zach Reed rule, it is worth going for. But I want running back and tight end, or wide receiver and tight end. I want to know I'm winning 2 different spots. Otherwise, I'm just a competitive playoff team. That's the way I run it in my mind. You've got a clear advantage of running back, and you're clearly, even if not weak, at flex, because you have to start 3 wide receivers before you get to your flex. You have a little too much hopes and dreams to say you're a top 3 team. But I really like your roster. These are the players I want to bet on being better or worse. If you want to improve this roster, I think Pickens is clearly the one with the most value and risk that you could try and turn into more points or just more solid points. It doesn't have to be picks, although that is the generic way you approach it in Dynasty. But Pickens is in a tier right now with Traylon Burks. Does a Traylon Burks owner prefer Pickens right now? That can happen.
He's got Burks too.
Sorry. Yeah, bad
no,
example.
It's okay.
Drake London is also not too far away. So that's a way of trying to get value and also a little more solid floor, because Pickens is a little more risky than London or Burks, in my opinion. Or you can go the other way. Deontay Johnson, we just mentioned, is a deeper, solid floor guy. What can you get on top of Deontay Johnson for Pickens? I think anyone should be excited to get Pickens for Deontay Johnson. And if you want to aim for a running back or future draft capital that you can turn into a running back when you need it, if you need it this year because your other bets pay off, or an advantage at tight end, what can you get with Kelsey? Because at this point, Kelsey's is all old enough that young 800-yard rookie season wide receivers could turn into a Kelsey plus. Or maybe not in your league. So what does a George Kittle owner? And that's the way I would approach it. Identify the players that you like. You're not trading them away for nothing because they're risky, but you're trying to replace that risk with something else, maybe improving your points per game while maintaining some level of value so that they can be traded for a first or a second round pick this year or next year, or just outright be a first or second round pick. I hope this is making sense, because these are the thoughts that occur to me when I look at my own Dynasty teams. So looking across your roster, that's the one that clearly stands out to me, because he's really high valued, rightly so. You don't want to trade it for nothing, but there's a little bit of risk in there. So what can I turn that into to improve my team overall in points per game and value? Is there anyone else on this team that sticks out to you? Maybe ETN? ETN seems a little bit risky.
And that's the thing. Like, if we're looking at this team and we say we don't think it's quite there, Hall and ETN then, to me, are go make moves to get those positional advantages at receiver and tight end. Because to me, in a start 3 wide receiver, the receiver position becomes really valuable. Yeah. So if you can start looking at, and again, because I don't think you have quite the firepower to get there this year, now all of a sudden you've got Breece Hall as a 3rd-year player next year, coming off an injury. Hopefully he does well. But if you can trade him now on the speculation, or trade him once he starts, because he's going to come back by early in the season. Like, they're already talking, he's working out. Once you start seeing those workout videos, the Breece Hall, it's all going to come back. And the way I play running back is, if I can, after that 2nd season or sometime during the 3rd season, make a move to get a young wide receiver and a pick, I'll do that. You may be able to do that already with Breece Hall. And so that's a player I'm looking at. In ETN, Peter, to your point too, I was
going to say, Hall's scarier to trade away from me for ETN. But ETN and Pickens, that gives you to a hell of a value tier.
Yeah. Yep.
Like, another way of thinking about it is, if you drafted this in a redraft league, I'd be hot. I think you're on a run. You could really win this year. If your bets on Pickens and Judy pay off, this is the roster, right? But we're playing Dynasty, so we take some of that sleeper, some of that maybe, and we stop playing for this year, even though we're still playing for this year. So could you turn ETN and Pickens into CDIM, who's like the least exciting top 12 wide receiver, or Amon-Ra, if that's the guy in your league? And then, yeah, you've lost your positional advantage at running back, which is really important for winning a league. But your value is a lot safer, and so is your points per game. And if you haven't given up your draft capital, then you can still make moves for that points per game if the rest of your roster really goes off. Or ETN and Hall, if you really want to put them on the list, Zach. It's a great year for going and getting those older running backs. Hall and ETN are hot. They should be. They're two of the only top 12 running backs who's under 50, you know? So Is there a window on Barkley or CMC or Dobbins that some people like right now? I'm out, but whatever. You've also got Henry and you've got Jacobs, and you could move them into these older running backs while adding value or wide receivers or picks. And that's Dynasty. That's how you take a really good roster. If you draft, and that, to be clear, that means you're playing Dynasty well. You have more than 10 top 10 picks in a redraft league. You're playing Dynasty well. But you're going to keep it rolling forward. So can you turn it into even more top 10 picks by this time next year and still stay competitive this year? And I think you could by going for some of those older running backs with pluses, with the Deontay Johnson or with an undervalued top 12 wide receiver instead of going for another running back. But those are just thoughts. That's sorry, Rando, I didn't mean to go on it because there are so many ways, because you've built a good team, you've got so many different directions you go in. And it really comes down to the conversations you start with your league, what your league prefers, what's available. You're not beating anyone. If you go in any of those paths, you're just building your roster in a certain way. Maybe they're playing for more points right now and more shiny things, and you just try and work out a deal that works for both of you. And those are the avenues I try and explore for a team like this. And to be clear, this is a really good team. I'm worried you think I'm saying it's a terrible team, so I'm not like, you're winning. But in Dynasty, I hardly ever want to think that about a team. And this is, top 70% roster. It's awesome.
But it's the start 3 wide receivers that really gets me
league format.
Because you don't have a wide receiver 1 there.
We hope. Yes. I'm with you.
So, and like JSN's a wide receiver 1, but like future value wide receiver 1. He's not going to be a wide receiver 1 this year.
I don't think so,
no, I mean, not with DK and Lockett.
I expect Burke's ceiling is a little lower based on his rookie season as well. He's like Pittman. It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
That's where my hesitation is the start 3 wide receivers, and I don't see this team having. Yeah, I don't see this team having. I think you lose all 3 wide receiver, slots, which is hard.
Yep. Thanks for the question. Spock 498. He's a contender, maybe. This is the roster. It's better that I do it that
Peter
way.
says I'll be the judge of that.
I'm the arbitrary judge of Dynasty. Let's see. It's non-tight end premium. It just says QB. I don't know. It's super flex. Okay. I do see that 12 team. So fairly okay. This is fairly straightforward. League format wise, I like your pick. You haven't had your rookie drafts yet, I guess. You got a big good pick compliment. Ken Walker, we've been saying is a trade, but he's really hard to get a good trade for all off season, and it certainly didn't get easier in the draft. You don't have a QB2 this year. You have Tannehill, who's a fine QB fill-in, but I don't know who's a regular QB2. I guess lots of people like Watson more than I do.
I mean, you got Lawrence, Watson. Yeah. I think Watson's you don't think he's a QB2?
No, that's what I just said.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think about him when I think about that. But yeah, he should be top 12-ish.
He could be a top 5. I mean, I'm not predicting that he will.
Tannehill's fine.
Yeah. You add in Bijan in that. You add in either Bryce Hall. Brees Hall. No. Bryce Young. Words. You add in, Bryce Young or Stroud at the 104, or Gibbs. You trade that. Yeah. Or you add Gibbs, or you add Addison. So this has got some potential. You need Pitts to actually play tight end. You're really hoping that Atlanta figures things out with Pitts, London, and also Bijan,
which is fine, but it is worth.
That's a lot of Falcons.
That is a lot of Falcons. The thing that I note about this team is it's fine. It's good. It's a really good dynasty roster, whereas the last one was a really good redraft roster, hoping for some hits. Is the way it works out in my head, because you've got thick quarterbacks, but again, until Murray's healthy, it's not thick with points. I'm really into buying Murray in Dynasty, don't get me wrong. And Watson, I can't wrap my head around the hype that I should have for his points. That's just a me thing. So you got 2 top 12 quarterbacks this year, but you don't have one of those Lamar, Hurts, those big difference makers. And you've got a great feel. So there's a lot of thickness to this team, which is great. It means in Dynasty, you're just sitting pretty, you're playing the windows. And if you start gaining momentum, you can start turning some of that value. Like you draft Bijan Robinson, like Zach says, you'll probably start rolling this year. And then you can start tearing up and going for the running backs that you need and trying to find the positional edges that you need this year. So this roster is well set up because you can easily turn it into like you can go for competitive this year, or you can just keep playing because your roster's set up to weather this season, even if it goes badly. But Zach's point's a fair one. With all those Falcons, it could easily be a fair weather season, and you'll be fine because of the thickness of quarterbacks and wide receivers that you've got. But I can't say trade Ken Walker anymore. The value's just not there. And if I say trade Higgins, Russ will kill me in my sleep. I'm pretty sure that's the way that works. So you're on a wait and see, but it's a really good dynasty build. Like you can weather most things that this season throws at you and take it in whichever direction you think's a path of least resistance for you. I'm pretty confident that you should roll into the season and see what happens, but it doesn't seem like there's a clear direction. Don't trade for this guy or that guy based on where you're at. So maybe try and diversify from the Falcons. Like no more Falcons players. You've hit your limit. Okay, no more allowed.
Or go get Ritter. I mean, like if you're gonna go,
I guess go all in. I mean, if we're going in. Got Tony as well. Can't forget my upside player. He's not your upside player, but he fits in that category. I get you. Yeah, again, but that's more Judy and Pickens and Tony. These are all we're hoping to see something, you know. And until then, we're just kind of in their values of value. There's no they're overvalued or they're undervalued. There's just you're hoping for a hit, and that's fine. It's a good roster, man.
That was a different. It was Spock had that second one was a different team.
Oh, was it a different team?
Yeah.
Oh, it was just formatted at the contender question mark. Okay. Yep. Very lot of similarity to your quarterbacks though. Watson, Murray, and Mac Jones.
Yeah, Lawrence and Mac Jones are pretty different though. Yeah,
yeah, that's true. But Mac Jones and Tannehill kind of similar. Not really. Let's see. Sanders. Why am I forgetting his first name?
Miles.
It's
not Barry.
Miles
Although
Sanders,
it could be.
Aaron
You may be
Jones.
okay.
Rashad White. Your running backs are fine. Like, I love Aaron Jones, don't get me wrong, but this is a definite fine category of running backs. Your quarterbacks are also, I would put them on the good side, but without Murray this year, just fine. Did I?
The receivers.
Yeah. I'm just getting CD, AJ Brown, Waddle. So you're trying to win through wide receivers. I'm on Ross St. Brown, Hollywood. Love all your wide receivers. I also like the tightness of that group. There's not a lot of depth to it, and that's the way it should be. And Kittle. So you've got two positions that are providing you advantage. I would shop a quarterback on this team. Not to say that's my default, but it's probably my default. I love rostering Murray in Dynasty. Don't get me wrong. But if you can find a building team that will take Mac Jones and Murray and get you another one of those top guys, like this team, you're putting yourself on a little bit of a knife edge there. But I don't like the idea.
Yeah, I think that's the problem, Spock, with this team is you are thin. You're razor thin with what it's a start 10, and you've got Watson and then Mac Jones because Murray's out.
Yeah.
Okay, then you've got Sanders and Aaron Jones. White's fine, but let's not count him yet. CD, AJ Brown, Waddle, St. Brown, Hollywood, and Kittle. So there's your 10. That's a really fine line you're walking. Like it's a good team, but it's a fine line.
No 23 picks as well, so there's not a lot of fresh meat coming.
Yeah.
That sounded horrible, but there you go. Team that could easily be competitive this year, like very competitive with those wide receivers and those running backs solid. But in Dynasty, that to me means build. And it's awkward to build because your wide receivers are as thick as they come and you've got Kittle. And that's why I'm thinking of throwing some of that value up to try and get another better quarterback, because that's, again, a safe dynasty thing. If you got Herbert, you got Burrow, you're locked in, you're good. And so you can weather, if that thinness of your roster puts you on the bad side of a season, your roster's still fine. All the value's still there. You still got a great player in that quarterback. And that's why I like playing it that way.
Yeah, the only other thing I could think is you see how things are going during the first 4 weeks of the season, and you either decide to, all right, I'm gonna add ammunition with my 24 picks, or I'm gonna sell those running backs and try to attack next year. Hardcore. Like that's the way. Like those are the two options to me. And it's a wait and see. It's a let's see how things are going, how Sanders, how Aaron Jones, how Rachaad White are playing. If Mac Jones is starting and producing because now they've got an offensive coordinator, if all those things are happening, I'm willing to go move a 24 pick to upgrade at running back or upgrade at quarterback. Trade Murray and a pick and go get a one of the top 6 quarterbacks. Whereas if things aren't going well, then and you can trade Aaron Jones and you could trade Sanders and move on to next year. But that's just kind of where I'm. Like, your contender question mark is very apt. Like, we don't know yet.
It's on the money. I would feel a lot more confident in saying you're a contender, see how it goes for the first 4 weeks, which is all you can do at this point, to be honest. I don't see any big sells or big buys in this roster. If you had a plethora of like second and third round picks this year, which I get that you have none, but like if you were taking a few shots on a Roschon Johnson or a Condre Miller or a Tank Bigsby, like, don't get me wrong, they're not league winners, but it just provides a little bit of depth to that section of your roster. And at running back, if there's anything missing on this roster, it's not depth, it's that dearth of running backs that can provide you that edge while your wide receivers kick ass, because Kittle's going to do your job. Your quarterbacks are just okay, which is why I'd rather have that depth of running back. Well, that's what I'm thinking of. But again, I don't think you have a lot to. There's not like sell Mac Jones for all the second round picks. I no, just keep Mac Jones. Just do like Zach said. You're gonna have to play the season out, see how it goes, see what you get off the waiver wire, and angle yourself towards 24. If it doesn't go your way. But to be fair, it easily could. Sanders and Aaron Jones could easily get you off to a hot start. And I think White's going to be okay, would be the way I'd describe it. So you're probably feeling pretty good for the first 4 weeks. But you got to keep an eye on the thinness of that. Scandrick, is Alec Pierce not a winner from the... No. Alec Pierce is a big loser. That sounded wrong. Alec Pierce Dynasty Fantasy Football rosters are a big loser from the NFL draft, in my opinion. And it's not because of Richardson, although JJ Zacharyason's podcast this week was really interesting. He dug into how running backs affect the rest of it, and it was a really interesting podcast. Highly recommend it. I don't want to just recreate the takeaways here, but it's not necessarily a negative for at least one other positional group is one of my takeaways. All right. And I think someone like Pierce could thrive in that. And I like the number of routes he ran last year. That's what I was saying this offseason. But they drafted a better wide receiver in the third round. They drafted Josh Downs, who can do that job better and has more recent draft capital. Again, that's just an opinion. I don't know what the facts of reality are going to be. But if you ask me straight up, I think Josh Downs is going to be better than Alec Pierce. I don't think those routes are going to protect him from last year. I think Josh Downs is going to eat his lunch, which is sad. I had some hope for Alec Pierce, and I definitely prefer seeing players succeed, even if it's just for fantasy. As far as Richardson goes, I'm not scared of a Russian quarterback, but it needs some adjustment, especially when you've got Jonathan Taylor already there. Again, I would advise listening to the podcast, which I assume you all do, but the essential way of thinking of it is every time a quarterback rushes, that just takes a play from something else the team might have done. And that comes from somewhere. Where it's going to come from is a little bit... But it can hamper at least one positional group. Zach, sorry, it looked like you had something better.
No, and Richardson, as much as we like him and his potential for fantasy, for the NFL and especially for wide receivers in Indy, there has to be an awful lot of growth in Richardson's ability to throw the ball and ability to process defenses and get the ball in the right spot. Like that, if you
Rookie
look at
quarterbacks in general
and
great.
but not, I mean, not like if you look at him and what he did in college and how far he has to grow in the NFL. And then you look at all of the other picks who were taken highly in the last like 10 years. Like he's the worst passer out of anybody. Like he just didn't do it in college. And you have like these plays where you see it and you're like, oh, that was great. Do it again. And he doesn't. And so yes, he's a high pick, and yes, the Colts are going to try to work him into a system and make him a passer. And people point to Jalen Hurts and people point to Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts were head and shoulders better passers coming out.
See, that's kind of where my mind goes when we had this last conversation. The one thing that I keep in my head is how many players want to do this and how many players can. I think it's a little, it's not disrespectful, but like Hurts and Lamar are phenomenal at it. Again, relative to Mahomes and Herbert, yeah, sure, whatever. But like, it's really difficult to do. And it's not that Richardson can do it because he's got the opportunity, or he can do it because we've got nothing to tell us he can or he can't. That's where I'm at. I'm not saying it's less likely. I just know, I believe we know that it's very few people can do it well, and you have to do it well. And we have no idea if he can do it well.
Yeah.
That's the risk. Yeah.
And I think people like you get wrapped up in the like fantasy versus reality where like people like and I am advocating for taking Anthony Richardson at the 102 because in fantasy his legs I mean his legs give you that chance, and especially tied to that draft capital, he's going to get a chance to do that. If he runs for 700 yards, he's a top 12 quarterback. Like he is.
Yeah, I agree.
But that doesn't make Alec Pierce better necessarily. If
it also doesn't make him.
No, it doesn't.
But again, for my money, the problem here is Downs. If there's a role for a wide receiver in that, I think it's Downs. But Pittman can eat Downs' lunch, frankly. So, and so even Downs' opportunity is a little limited in that regard. So yeah, that's just where we're at. We shouldn't expect a lot of upside on the Colts from the wide receiver core, but if the value drops, and where the values are right now, like Downs is a mid-second round pick, Alec Pierce has been below that all off season. I mean, to the same point as Richardson, the upside from there is worth it. I'm not scared to roster him, but I don't think they're going to win me leagues this year. I do think there's many paths to them suddenly being worth more. If Richardson can, if he can pass, which again is a really hardcore for literally first-round quarterbacks drafted in the top 5 have failed at this after having significant experience doing it at high-level conferences in college for years. And Richardson's going to try and figure it out in the next 3 months. He can, and that would be phenomenal. Yeah. And all the upside exists if he can, but it is a hell of a task. It goes back to the Josh Allen thing. Like, it's hard to admit, but if you remind yourself of how special he was to improve, even the marginal amount he did, like it's almost insulting not to recognize.
And to your second question, Shadrack, why is Pickens being taken ahead? Because he's better, and he's in a situation that you already know where he is, and he had 800 yards on 52 catches in that same situation last year.
I was literally just looking over first rookie stats to do some videos and also answer some questions in a podcast. That question means I would go back to basic on how to assess rookie wide receiver seasons. Alec Pierce, if you squint, you can see some positivity. Pickens belongs in a list with players that succeed. Like the 800 yards in your first year, just that basic line, like 3 failed after doing that, ever. And remember, we're only talking about 40 wide receivers ever to hit that mark in the rookie season. And only like 6 struggled to produce after that. And of those 6, half the group produced at least one top 24 season. If you're comparing Pickens to Alec Pierce, then I'd reassess how you're assessing their rookie season, because it's night and day. Again, reality is reality. Maybe Alec Pierce is a better footballer. What the hell would I know? I don't even watch the games. But in terms of how well they compare, so how well they should do in future production, Pierce, we should probably expect nothing, but there's maybe a little signal. He ran a lot of routes. And Pickens is, he did what Justin Blackmon and Jordan Matthews and Jerry Jeudy did in his first year. And those are the 3 misses, by the way. Jerry Jeudy, 3 years in, we're still betting high-level draft capital that he can do it because of what he did in his rookie season and also his college profile, which Pickens also had a good college profile and good draft capital. So Pierce is a maybe from deep down the depth charts of a rookie draft. And Pickens was Jerry Jeudy, is a high drafted, high successful, and epically productive in his rookie season. We should expect more. Pierce is a sleeper. Pickens is, if he doesn't do it, something went wrong. It should be expected. So that's polar opposite to me. But again, I get it wrong all the time. So I'm not just trying to explain what the question strikes me as well. And the trouble with Pickens' rookie season, if there is trouble, and there is a little, is that he didn't earn targets at a relatively high rate, which most rookies who go on to do well do. But to the point, if you look at players who earned 800 yards in their rookie season and did that, those are the outliers. The only other wide receiver to have 800 yards and below 15% targets for route run, got to be a terrible player, right? Yeah, it was DeAndre Hopkins. That's why Alec Pierce doesn't compare. You were actually talking about it. I should have clicked on. His rookie season with the ghost of Matt Ryan and an O-line that can buy him the seconds to get downfield is being priced at his ceiling. He did well with that. I don't understand the framing here.
He's saying Matt Ryan was bad. The offensive line wasn't good.
Yeah, but he did very well in that situation. Oh, yeah, that's Pickens. Sorry. My mind went down. Okay. How can I frame that? He didn't earn targets. He didn't earn target share. And the routes he earned were mostly empty. That compares to players in positive or negative situations that go on to do relatively little. He was talking about a player with significantly... Pierce was drafted lower, significantly, right?
He had decent capital. I thought he was like a third.
It was decent, but it's not.
I don't have my.
Second round, 53rd
was
overall.
Yep.
Whereas Pickens was second round earlier, right? It was a pick right before him.
52nd.
So yeah, I'm definitely wrong on that.
Much earlier.
But no, this is stuff that falls into the ether. Like Pickens was expected to be drafted highly, played in a better conference, did better in college. Yeah. Pierce was kind of a second round draft capital, but a very different prospect. It's just not the same caliber prospect across the board. And again, if you want to adjust for situations, Pickett did that with Kenny Pickett and Deontay Johnson on the roster and Pat Freiermuth. And the other signal to that stuff that I was just talking about, target competition like that matters. You can earn below average targets per route run in that situation, but you can't earn below average routes or target share for that matter, and then be compared to similar levels of expectation moving forward. Because that's all we have to go on. Previous production is the best predictor of future production, and excuses for the quarterbacks don't matter when you're talking about opportunity earned in that scheme relative to the other players in that scheme. If that makes sense. For me, anyway. Pickens also had less than 1.4 yards per route run, which is why I think everyone thinks he's bad. Outside the targets per route run, but again, so did Hopkins. I don't think he's Hopkins, by the way, not even close. But it is interesting that the only other comparable player across the things that make Pickens bad compares to literally one guy, and it's pretty much the best hit we've had since 2008. Penny gets hurt week 3 and has 0 value. Not a risk I'm taking unless I have no other running backs. What is Penny's value right now, though?
Nothing.
For me, yeah, I think he's in that tier of you roster running backs and you're pretty happy if you get 3 games out of them. in a season. That was the other thing I was going to say about Fella's team here with Sanders and Aaron Jones. Like, it's a type of running back list where you can get off to a hot start and then you don't have any of those running backs by week 6. So keep an eye on that.
Yeah.
I'm so tired of being a competitive playoff team. Exactly. It sucks. So build to be. It's why I say most teams should build for value. It's John Bosch. Try to be the last team in your league rather than the middle of your league. Being in the middle is the worst. And so if you're competitive, if you look like you can play off, don't play it like that. There's no reason to go all in on points when you just when you think like that's the situation your team is. And we're pretty good at assessing that. You would be pretty good at assessing that. And so instead you play for draft capital and you play for value players and you try and lock up value in the high value positions, quarterback at superflex and wide receiver and everything else, or the positional advantages of a young tight end like Kittle or potentially Pitts. And you just play the value because being a perpetual playoff team sucks in Dynasty. In a good league, in a good competitive league, it's really difficult. And actually, I was thinking about this earlier today, Zach, but I don't have a way of framing it. I was thinking about Matt Pierce playing in some of the dirt leagues that I'm in. And I'm pretty sure, like, I think we're used to taking advantage of the fact that many in our league are trying to use high-level play. I was thinking about this. Like, some leagues that I've been in, if I traded for draft picks the way Matt Price and other people do, or John Bosch, like, you just want draft picks, like, I think you would end up making most of them, which is, like, the worst thing that happens if you trade into all of them. Because, anyways, I don't have a great take on that. But I was like, it wouldn't work on a league where most people are angled more towards points. Well, it would work, but it wouldn't. I mean, it wouldn't be as effectively devastating as when you're in a league with me and I'm like, oh my God, he's got all the picks. I got to do something. And we know what we're playing for value too, if that makes sense.
I don't know.
So we react to it.
If you look at J Mike's team that he did the J Mike Invitational where he had the first 14
the right draft
picks, like, but I mean, I don't even think it's necessarily the right draft year. Like, how many? What's the average for top 24 seasons in a first round?
It's like position.
Well, I just mean overall. Like, if you have
yeah, like 2 quarterbacks, 2 wide receivers, 3 running backs, and 1 tight end, I think.
Okay, so if you did that in a draft, that's a pretty good.
Yeah,
that's a pretty good.
And
lineup.
Also the fact you've got that value insulation for the first 3 years anyway. And
so I don't think that's the worst thing to do, even in a league.
I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying I think it works especially well in people that are hyper vigilant or like we are. We're aware of everything everyone in our league's doing, and it helps a little bit. Sorry, I'm dying of it. Pete, Zach, long time no see. Thank you very much, Howdy's heroes. I hope all is well and you all are grinding on. Thanks for all you do. Cheers. No problem. Thanks very much. Nice to see you again. I'm out on Pickens. Team Deontay. Actually, no, I don't mind that at all. I would be actively and enthusiastically trading away Pickens. But when everyone's saying trade a guy, I suspect that it's difficult to trade a guy. That's just the way I am. And I just want to lock in your head. Yes, you should. Everyone outside of Wilson and Olave and probably Drake London are in that category, to be honest with you, from the 2022 class. But don't trade it away just to trade it away, because I suspect people underrate that rookie season because everyone's screaming sell. Well, not everyone, but a lot of people are screaming sell. Like, if you're just getting a single first-round pick, I don't honestly think it's worth it. Like, you're hoping to get that level of rookie season from whatever pick that is. So you're trading a thing for a maybe a thing. Well, not quite, but still. It's like with Watson. Like, I don't think he's Jordy Nelson. I think he's Chase Claypool. But I'm actually above average on him because rookie seasons that are even that decent until you squint at them a little bit are actually relatively rare. And I don't want to throw it away for nothing. I'm unlikely to get that for a random first in any particular year. Although there is some argument to the fact that random firsts get more valuable and the value insulation. And if you're a heavy trader, the first is probably more useful. But I just want to throw that out there. Like, don't throw it away just because people say trade it away, but don't throw it away. Maybe that's a one line. I don't know. Actually, what I was doing in that video was pointing out that Jordan Matthews had 3 800-yard seasons, and by year 3, you could still trade him away for about what you could trade him away for midway through his second season. It's like Jerry Jeudy right now. We've yet to see it pay off, but the value's still there. There's still, I think we should still be interested in Jeudy because there's Russell Wilson bounce back. So, like, if he's terrible this year, but then in year 3, the team's drafting a young, exciting quarterback, then suddenly Pickens' value is, oh, he's finally going to pay off. And I think there's at least 2 years of value ups and downs with Pickens. Maybe we're a little bit wrong on Pickett. It can happen, probably not. Or maybe at least he's able to follow it up with 1,000-yard season, and then the value sustains, if not increases. And game theorying it out, there's lots of positive outcomes for Pickens that don't include being DeAndre Hopkins. He's fine. He's fine. Don't throw it. Did I skip one there? But yeah. Especially at value, Deontay over Pickens for sure. The freak, can you all help me out? I hope so. Jacobs in a half-point PPR, 1 quarterback, 18 league. Would love to sell high and get a pick and a player on Jacobs? I think that would be rough.
I don't know that again, this is another one of those where if you're selling running backs high, you have to sell them in the season, especially when
they're scoring points, right?
Older running back, yeah. And not that he's actually older, but that's people think because Jacobs is 25, like he's been in the league a few years.
He wasn't drafted this year, so he's old. It's kind of
But that would be my. And again, I would have to see your team because if you're trading Jacobs, you're probably not getting the points back for Jacobs. Like to me, it would be a pivot to like Burks and a pick or something like that. It wouldn't be.
And the best way of finding the player you'll get is to look for a Burks type, even Pickett and Watson, but go looking through your league, find the strong roster that could compete this year. That's the guy who's most likely to be like, oh, I'll throw you maybe a Pickens because everything we just said, or Watson or Burks, who only had 400 yards in his rookie season, because they are whatever. I don't like bad young wide receivers, And Jacobs is guaranteed. Jacobs is going to be a top 12 start 8 times this year, probably. I think that's a fair expectation, right? So any team that's going to value that is probably more willing to give you something that would be a pick or a player for what you're looking to sell high on. But I really don't think it's a sell high window on him. At least not in my leagues. There's not a lot of people like, oh, Jacobs. Eckler looks bad to him right now. So.
Yeah, but they like Jacobs will be a buy. Like you get in the season and you need points, and all of a sudden you're looking at Jacobs and how the Raiders are using him, and that'll be the time to sell.
What we're saying right now about Jacobs is what people will use to say he's a buy in season when he's scoring points. They don't want him because he's old, except when they approach you in season, you'll be like, no, I'm scoring points. Yeah. And they'll actually find out that you want a young pick or you want a player and a pick, and they'll be like, dang it. They didn't realize they should have been trying to trade him now, Sean, 14-team, 1 QB start 10. Traded 2 mid to late 24 first and a 26 first. Wow, 26 first exists. And 2 future seconds for Diggs and Kelsey. So you're trying to win. I respect it. And with such a deep league, those make me the favorite. Too much? 14-team league. The bigger the league gets, the more players every team is starting as well. The more it's about depth than it is studs and duds, just as a general rule. Whereas you've traded for 2 studs here, which certainly swings your roster balance, I would say, in a 14-team league, to your point. I don't think this is too much because they're spaced so far out. You're essentially not playing 3 firsts. You're playing, it's not really 3 firsts because that 26 is so far out. I think it seems fair from this point. But you're very, very much on it. You've got to take advantage of them because you've traded them. Which is fine. You just have to try and win this year.
Well, and to me, the answer to your question, Sean, is with such a deep league, those make me the favorite. So no, it wasn't too much. If you're sitting there right now, and if you win one of the next 2 years, whatever. Like one of those first is going to be the 114. Like, whatever.
That's a good point. Yeah, they're even going to be lower the better you do. So, no, yeah, I like that a lot. John, what do you think the split would be in Atlanta? I don't see Patterson staying. No, Patterson's not going to get much run. No one's going to get much run at running back outside of the ancillary carries everyone has to get. And yeah, Huntley wasn't particularly efficient. No, it's going to be a John Robinson show. I expect from game one. That's the level of expectation I have from that level of running back with that level of draft capital. He's got 30 touches a game from game one is a little much to hope for, but and also then you have injury concerns. But yeah, I expect a full workload from day one. I don't think anyone else features.
Yeah. I mean, yes. I mean, they spent the 8th overall pick on a running back behind an offensive coordinator, head coach that want to run. It's Bijan, baby.
We've been saying, CMC's backup and Barkley's backup are due to get significant touches any day now, just to rest them. And they don't. They just don't. I've even seen people in redraft choose JSN over Deontay Johnson. Yeah, that's terrible. I would say
Wild.
Rookies in redraft are interesting because they have such end-of-season value in that's when they tend to come on, when you need the points the most for the playoffs and the fresh legs and stuff like that. But yeah, especially this draft class, I'm not expecting them to be big redraft playmakers in fantasy. But yeah, that's just a youth thing. The split will be 80-20. Which would be one of the heaviest splits in the NFL, I think. For the record, Team Deontay 2. You're noted. You're on the list, Hunter. Don't worry. You're invited to the next party. Appreciate it. Danny Dimes or Sam Howell? Dimes.
Yeah. It's Daniel Jones. As much as I like Sam Howell, again, you assume way more risk with Howell.
Really? Probably.
For sure.
Working a trade. Dak and a 24 second and third, mid to late, for Howell, Dotson, and a 24 first, late. Is that even? No, I think Dak's side wins pretty heavily. Yeah. Like 3 Sam Howells is a Dak Prescott. Dotson's interesting. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to underrate Dotson. But he's a heavy, you're taking a flyer. Like Pierce, but a little better. He got a lot of routes. He did pretty decent, but I didn't love the rookie profile, so I don't have a lot of expectations in general. And the first is a really shiny thing. Yeah, I just think this is Dak and the Superflex especially. Dak's been underrated since he finished in the top 5 twice and no one cared. And that team's built to pass right now. So, it's just Dak for me. Dan scored more points per game than Herbert and Trevor Lawrence. It isn't close. It's not really close to the Sam Howell thing. I think Dimes is a little underrated. I ended up drafting him in the one startup I've done this offseason, and I'm not a big fan, but I had Zach in the back of my head. Points per game. Accuracy. From 2022. That's how you sound in the back of my head. That's your exact voice. Perfect impersonation. And he just got paid, man. It's not like the signaling they're not going to try and go all in on it. I respect the improvement. I try. If you have to ask, take out. That's cruel, but thank you. Yeah, I don't think he had to ask. I just think he was wondering. You could get into these windows or these content bubbles where people are talking about the potential of Howell. Like Zach Wills, and I would as well. I think Sam Howell had a serious rookie profile, and the fact that he's got an open field to it, Sam Howell can impress, and I think he's got really interesting weapons. But it's a long shot to put it in terms, whereas Dak is a sure thing, incredibly impressive top 12 quarterback,
I just took Howell in the 14th round of a startup.
Yeah, let ADP be your guide. If there's a 10-round difference, it's probably...
Yeah.
Mahomes has less help than Howell as well.
No, he doesn't. Travis Kelce is better than the entire Commanders team, period.
I don't think Mahomes is short for help if there's no one else on the roster. To be fair, he'll figure it out. Don't worry about it. How for Stevenson in Superflex? Fair trade? Ramondre Stevenson. That's a
close.
nasty question, and because of the position, it's probably close. But I think it's a nasty ass trade. Like, Hal doesn't provide you much. It's just a starting quarterback for this year. That's what you're hoping for. Stevenson could have a top 12 season this year at running back, and that's significantly better. I think I keep Stevenson if I was offered that, but I think fair, I guess, but I don't think I'd want.
No, it's Stevenson, but like again, the upside of Howell is a top 14 quarterback. Like he could be Daniel Jones.
That's maybe that.
Well, no, like I think he's a good enough thrower and a good enough runner to be viable. Whether or not he gets there, it's hard to say. But like people are already trying to make him be great, and we haven't seen him. Like he sat for a year. He wasn't a high pick. Like
it's a whole why we're not allowed nice things, because someone notices something and it's true, but then we talk about something and then we get to talking to each other about the same thing, and then we're like, well, I don't want to miss, like right or wrong, I gotta have this player just in case it happens. I want to be in on the party train. And then you're drafting Brandon Ayuk in the 4th round, and everyone's making fun of you halfway through the season. Well, just me, frankly. And no, that's what it is. There's a Howell content bubble out there, and it's understandable. And if he hits, it'll be a hell of a party train, you know? But
but you'd be a lot happier taking Howell in the 3rd round of your rookie draft last year than you will be for
let's see him play. Let's just let him play, maybe, you know, before we decide he's the next Tom Brady or whatever. That one sent the chat on fire. Apparently, there's a lot of fun comparisons. How would you construct your roster in a 12-team Superflex standard scoring? I probably wouldn't be playing, but okay. No titles and premium, start 9. That's a setup. If you're rebuilding in a standard scoring league, that's a decent question. I mean, my typical build kind of focuses on onesie positions, and the standard scoring would probably emphasize that, even in quarterback. Like that edge that Zach talks about of those few quarterbacks. Like I want Mahomes and I want Allen, and I probably want Kittle or I want Kelsey. Probably Pitts if I'm pure rebuilding. And that's where my focus would be, because the wide receivers are suddenly... The real value is the longevity of the career, the longevity of the value arc, and the number of years that they have value in Dynasty, even if the points aren't there much longer than running back, only about a year and a half longer. But also the receptions aren't worth anything. And so going for running backs when you're rebuilding makes no sense just because it's standard scoring, because the receptions don't matter, and that affects them too. It makes them a lot more susceptible to just those injury and those high rates of change in the top 12. So I think I'd focus picks for sure, and I'd focus the onesie positions. I'd focus Mahomes, Allen, and Kyle Pitts probably. Best guess, but it's been a minute since I played in a standard scoring league. I don't think I've ever played in a Dynasty standard scoring. It's fun that it's still called standard, though.
I think with this one, though, you could almost quick rebuild. So if you
will almost have to.
Well, if you go and get running backs. So if you go get running backs, because you can start 3. So go get your 3 running backs, and then all of a sudden go after Devontae Adams, Cooper Kupp, like the guys who score touchdowns as receivers consistently that are older that people aren't valuing. Like I think that's the
fair point. Standard scoring takes some wind out of the Dynasty because it's touchdown dependent, which takes a lot of what we search for in Dynasty just out of the picture. So you may as well try and compete every year. A rebuild is essentially trading for the running backs and the older wide receivers no one values. Or even the Jacoby Myers of the world. Yeah, I mean, that would be a way of approaching it too. I would definitely consider that.
But if you're looking for, I think somebody like Waddle or St. Brown get underrated in that because they're slot receivers, but they're also slot receivers on offenses that score a lot of touchdowns, and they score a lot of touchdowns. So they're also wide receivers that I'm looking for. I don't know if you'll be able to get people to part with them. So to me, the easiest way is to build through those running backs and then attack the older wide receivers that do, that score. But
this is the same question. I got fooled. Tannehill was a top 10 QB in 2020. I believe that's accurate. Top 12 in 2021. If that is Howell's upside, that's not bad. It's not Howell's upside. I mean, it can happen, but like I honestly, I think the best way of saying that is AJ Brown was a top 10 and top 12 quarterback those 2 years. But that's a really high expectation for someone being drafted where he's drafted. He's got a path, and I think he was pretty decent in college. But it's similar to the Richardson stuff. I just want to respect the fact that very few players can do what Tannehill did that year, even though he took an unusual path, or Dak Prescott or Mahomes. Like, it's a really hard thing to do. And just because he has a path and because he had decent, like, that's not a reason to expect it. Like, it could happen, but we don't want to value him as if he's going to.
So yeah, it's going to Vegas, and if you have odds and you can make a small bet and stand to win a big thing, great. But if you're making a medium to large size bet to win, then it's not as much.
If you're betting more money than you can afford to lose on a Sam Howell, I'd be like, whoa, dude. No. Right. I mean, I guess I could understand that if you were betting on, a Bryce Young even, or an Anthony Richardson, because they've just got top 5 NFL draft capital. But Howell's got a trickier path. And I tell you what it's reminding me of. It's the Dak Prescott, speaking of, because I was saying similar things there, and look how great that worked out. But like, it wasn't like I didn't like Dak Prescott. I didn't want to go in. It's just I was like, I'm not paying a top 5 round pick for Dak Prescott when he's meant to be drafted like in the round 14, and then the upside is so much better to have gotten him there.
Right.
Or Sam Howell's a 3rd round rookie pick, to your point. Like, I mean, if that's where the hype's gotten him, then we're trying to start the race after the gun's already gone off.
That's it. Like if you're buying in here, I mean,
it's like being in a pyramid scheme. Like after it's been running for a little while.
It's the Bitcoin. Yeah, like it was really good to get Bitcoin in 2010 or 2009 when it was like a fraction of a cent. It was okay to get it in 2020 when it crashed and it went down to $4,000 a share. It was great to have it at 6,000 or 60,000, but if you bought it at 60,000 and now it's 25,000, you're not happy. If you bought it at 4,000 and it's 25,000, you are happy. Like we're now at a point where it depends on your league. Depends on how people are valuing him, but he should not be valued like Daniel Jones, who just put up a top 12 season last year.
The lesson here, if there is a lesson, I think there is, but you're your own person with your own mind. You can take it or leave it. But what I've added to my game a number of years ago is actually what the subject of the podcast 2 podcasts ago. I just released a new one, so it's the one before that. And it's when I hear significant noise from certain sectors about certain positions or certain players, it doesn't matter if I can even make the conditional format and go green on them. It's just that's something I'll listen to. For nothing, I'll do it early rather than be wrong later. Yeah. And here's the thing. Zach Reed pointed out, that guy on his podcast, pointed out Sam Howell to me, and it's one reason I knew to go look and, the conditional formatting goes green. So I add him in the 3rd round of Superflex drafts in his rookie draft. Like, that's the lesson. Or this year, Brenton Strange, and there's some noise on who's that Stidman, that really deep quarterback this year. I'm not saying he's even as effective as Sam Howell was in college. When you hear certain noise, do that in your 3rd round of your rookie drafts instead of drafting your favorite wide receiver sleeper who almost never pays off. That's the lesson here. Like, when you hear certain noise at certain positions, especially in Superflex at quarterback, just do that earlier before the hype trade gets started. Because then you're sitting here like, I love everyone saying these insane bets are worth it because you could even profit now, or you could wait to see. That's how you get in on those floors. It's not, is Sam Howell Dak Prescott? It's, can Sam Howell find a path to opportunity from a 3rd round rookie pick?
And if you, and I know you have been, but if you in the chat have been around as long as Peter and I have been, that you could have gotten Dak Prescott in round 4 or round 5 of your rookie draft or off waivers. And so, like, in my home league, I have Dak Prescott because I drafted him in the 5th round of our rookie draft, and I still have Dak Prescott. Like, I'm very happy that I drafted Dak Prescott in the 5th round of a rookie draft. Now, making the bet after he had his decent first year and he was now a quarterback 14, are you happy with making that bet? Yeah. Is there a lot more risk? Yeah. Are you as happy as if you'd got him for a 5th round rookie pick? No. So, like, it behooves you to get in on players early, and if it's depending on the acquisition cost, it doesn't matter if you're wrong. Like, it didn't matter. Like, getting Sam Howell in the 3rd or 4th round of your rookie drafts last year, if you're wrong on Sam Howell, it doesn't matter. It was a 3rd or 4th round rookie pick. They hit it 6%. Like, it doesn't matter. But if he all of a sudden this year is great, it matters a ton that you spent that pick last year.
And we clear, most of those guys don't do, like, Gardner Minshew, most of those guys do nothing. Like, literally, it's just a waste of a draft pick. But so probably was the other 3rd round player that you really want to take as someone who drafted a lot of wide receivers there. I know. But also, like, some of them just come out the blue. No one mentioned Gardner Minshew on any of the content platforms I listened to until suddenly it was here and he had a mustache and he was fun making videos. And so sometimes there's no warning as well. I'm not saying you catch every one of them, but, like, that's the best way. That's the most upside, right? And so Zach pointed out Sam Howell. You can also check out 2 QBs. Love their content if they're still producing it. Sal Slavin, if he's still making content out there. He used to work for 2 QBs and created a metric around finding rushing quarterbacks with a QBR metric that adjusted for that. And there's plenty of people out there that point them out earlier. John Hogue, who I hate and is my frenemy, mentioned Stidman on a podcast 3 weeks ago. He's a 4th round rookie round pick this year who will probably do nothing. But if in a year he's got a path to opportunity and we're getting similar questions on him as Howell, like, you could have known that now. And that's the lesson I always take away from these trends. Like, again, in the 14th round, I'm still willing to value, like, I had Sam Howell there, but everyone's trying to one-up themselves on draft round, and that's honestly how they creep up too far. Right now, it's fine, but if he starts getting in the question with Dimes and with Dak Prescott or any of the others that have actually done it with their high draft capital and so on and so forth, then it's too late. So he's probably still got a window. I think that's an important one. Scandrick, I've been looking at this comment while talking. I can't decide exactly where to start on it. But Richardson had the 3rd highest PFF deep pass grade in the SEC. It's awful specific, don't you think? And
I led this team in 9th inning doubles in the month of August.
Do decently immediately. If so, wouldn't Pierce be the best target for these throws? No, Pierce wouldn't be the best target for deep throws. Pittman probably the best target for deep throws.
Even Downs.
Yeah, Downs is better on the outside. Actually, Downs is better on the inside downfield, which is weird.
Yeah.
But Pierce is not that. That's everyone's favorite path, I think, to, like, immediate upside. Like, he can be the guy who catches a 100-yard bomb. That's specifically not Pierce's game in the NFL, I don't think. But few things. One, this is perfectly true and a perfectly good thing to value, but it's one of the things that don't make you more likely to be more right more often. And I just want to throw that out. And I will take on literally the actual guys at PFF who have statistic degrees and can use code. And I think I could win this argument because I'm right. He didn't pass enough that any of his passing grades matter. Right. He didn't pass enough. I'm very confident it did not pass the statistical threshold for number of data points where anything that we can put on a spreadsheet is predictive in any way. The other thing is, I would bet that's not a predictive stat. PFF grades are pretty decent, don't get me wrong, and they're an opinion from someone watching, so I don't want to disregard it. But if you're turning it into a statistic, I can start talking about predictiveness. I'm pretty sure that's not going to accurately predict how well people play in the NFL. Having said all of that, I think that's actually positive for Anthony Richardson. It means, yes, he could be a great downfield thrower because people who are watching see that potential. And there's not enough data points to say that it's wrong or it's right. It's as far as they could possibly do that anyway. So, yeah, I think he could probably do a lot of things in the NFL, but it's all probably. There's nothing that says he can any more than is says he can't, but there are opinions that suggest he can. I've listened to scouts talk about how you see him evolving on a game-by-game basis. It's incredibly intoxicating, and they're high-level, smart opinions. They know what they're talking about. But like Zach says, they also know they can't predict the future. It's an incredibly difficult thing to do. It's everything we've already said. Yeah. There's no stat that's going to... it can help you talk yourself into it, but it's not going to make you more likely to be more right. If you enjoy it, just go for it, though. The potential is definitely there.
To think that this is the end-all, be-all. Do you remember Alex Smith in San Francisco and early in Kansas City?
Yes,
he was a check down artist.
Well, I don't remember it, but I know.
But yeah, I mean, he was the check down artist. He was the guy who would complete, 67, 68% of his passes because he wasn't throwing the ball downfield. And then Tyreek Hill came in, and the first year they were fine. The second year, which was the last year Alex Smith was in Kansas City, he had PFF's highest deep pass grade in the NFL. Alex Smith, the check down artist, who all of a sudden, because Tyreek Hill came in, and again, I'm not saying that this is what happens to Richardson, but you have to take context with something like this. It's not the end all be all. And again, we're not, Shadrach, I don't want you to think that we are down on Anthony Richardson, because he can't.
I think the upside is worth it. I just think my unpaid job, as far as it is to let you know what the bet is. And the bet is, if it hits, it's to the moon. It's worth any risk. But there's not really anything. And believe me, it's frustrating for most of my answers to be, there's not, all of these narratives do not help make the decision. You have to go with your feels. But it also lets you off the hook. How do you feel? Because the upside's worth it.
To his point, it's you're hoping that Anthony Richardson is an outlier, and then that Alec Pierce becomes the outlier off the outlier. To me, it's the telephone game in a bad way, to try to fix your face to make Alec Pierce really fantasy relevant when he's fine, but he's probably not. Yeah.
That's why I approached it the way I did. At Alec Pierce's value,
yes,
you can have that hopes and dream.
Yep.
And because of the upside in Richardson, I think that is a good value decision. So even though I don't think so, that's my opinion. I will also tell you should definitely not be afraid of doing it despite that, because the value is adjusted for with Pierce, and the upside in Richardson means that there is no risk that it's too high. So it's fine. But if you want my honest opinion, I think it's Pittman. I don't think it's Pierce. I think Downs could also benefit if Richardson. If Richardson can actually do it, I think Downs will be the other guy on the roster I want. But the value's all adjusted for. So if you want to take the cheaper guy, I mean, that's not a bad bet. So I'm not waving you off it, but I'm adding my opinion to it anyway, just so you know the way I'm approaching it. But I'm not scared to add Alec Pierce at his ADP or whatever, or to add him for a third-round pick. It's just not something I'm particularly trying to do. If it's something you want to particularly try to do at that value, good. And even if it doesn't, like to Zach's point, even if it doesn't work out, that's what we mean by value adjusted. It's no harm, no foul. It was a decent bet for the upside. You're paying the minimum with the maximum mass output possible. So, you're paying $1 and you could win $1 million. That's worth it. Freak. So Kelsey and Donovan Peoples-Jones, always a good idea for Andrews. I actually like that. I don't mind that at all. And 302. That doesn't change my mind. Superflex PPR 12-team start 9. Got Izzy at 302 to handcuff to my Brees. You can play it that way if you want to. That's fine. How do you feel about the trade? I actually think the trade's pretty decent. I prefer Kelsey, but Andrews has got a couple extra years in the tank of value. Similar range, well, not similar range of outcomes. Kelsey will outproduce him because he's Kelsey. But Andrews is the only other player that can keep up right now, outside of maybe Kittle, obviously. So, I don't think that's bad at all. I think you're typically higher on Andrews than I am. So, do you go a different way? Is he muted or am I muted?
I like that trade. No, it was me, Peter.
Oh.
I like that trade. I think you're getting a similar tight end and you're getting years back. Like I don't mind that. I'm not like the Abanikanda doesn't like the whatever.
He's a running back. It's a good position to target. It's fine.
Yeah.
In fact, he's a handcuff makes it worse, but if it makes you feel more comfortable, it's fine.
But yeah, I don't mind that. I think you do lose just a smidge in production.
Yeah,
but you gain years.
But it's like,
so, yeah,
literally the only other guy you could do that. Apart from maybe Kittle. Justin, do I go into the year with Kincaid or try to snag a middling? If you drafted Kincaid or Devi drafted him or however it works, you just have Kincaid now. It is the time of year I get a lot of questions about trading rookies before the season starts because that's the period we're in. I think if you make those picks, you're in on the unless you get something insane like.
No, he's saying, do I go try to get another tight end?
Yeah, I was adding, but yeah. The other thing is, yes, you should not expect Kincaid to be your starter, even for a period, maybe for a game, but not for a period this year. Like that's not. I mean, I don't think that's a reasonable expectation for rookie tight ends. Actually, I've heard differing opinions on that, and they're interesting. So I'm not going to say it's impossible. I mean, Ingram and Pitts, right? But I don't think you should expect him to be a starter this year in any kind of fantasy format. And be really interested to see what he does. I think he can do things that can make you happy, have him on his roster, but I don't think you should expect to be regularly starting him. As for should you make a trade to get a starting tight end, I mean, Kelsey, Kittle, Andrews, those are the ones that actually matter. Outside of that, it's relatively easy to replace the production outside of that. And if you want high upside for a decent, like I think Waller is probably the best go-get target right now as a nice bridge with significant upside at his value for when Kincaid is quote-unquote ready. Waller probably who I'd suggest, or Kittle maybe, but he's higher value.
Yeah, you definitely want somebody else to start in your tight end. So
yeah,
since
but it's not really worth spending too much unless it's on those top two guys. Sorry, that's what I was trying to say.
This is a tweet from Fantasy Central, and obviously Pitts did this, so now there are 12, and maybe Freiermuth did this, so maybe there are 13. But as of September of 2021, and they're talking about Pitts coming in, since 1932, only 11 rookie tight ends have recorded over 600 receiving yards. And only 13 have scored more than 4 touchdowns. So, like, counting on a rookie tight end, and obviously Pitts had more than 600 yards receiving. I think Freiermuth may have done it as well. So, yes, now there are 13 tight ends since 1932. But I think the point still stands that you don't want to be counting on rookie tight ends.
Nah, even if they are slot wide receivers or whatever. The narrative is right now. What are your thoughts on quarterback importance in a 10-team versus a 12-team Superflex league? It's a decent question. Both for stud QBs and the rookie class, would your top 12 Superflex rookie rankings change for 10-team? I don't think. Sorry, Zach, do you want to take the swing at that one first? I keep running on.
I don't know. I don't think it really would for me much. Maybe a little. Maybe I'm less inclined to. Maybe I'd take the JSN, Addison, and Gibbs ahead of Stroud and Young, but I still think you're going the top quarterbacks. Like I play quarterback a lot, like I play tight end. Where like I either want the stud quarterbacks or I don't care. I play the opposite of Hogue. Hogue plays QBX, where he drafts all the quarterbacks. I play XQB, where I have all of the quarterbacks who probably aren't going to be a quarterback in 2 years on my team, and I just kind of piece it together that way. So,
yeah, it's a good default. And again, another example where you can play in Dynasty successfully in literally polar opposite ways if you go in on a decent way of doing it. I don't think 10 to 12, like Zach, I don't think it's enough to change a lot. It does. The fewer the number of teams or the fewer the number of starters, the more studs and duds my approach would become. And that, when looking at the rookie quarterback class, like Stroud is not going to be a top 12 quarterback anytime soon on that roster. but he could be a top 12 dynasty quarterback if he impresses. And so, no. If anything, it would make Richardson more likely to be competitive for the 101 spot. But I still don't think I could push him over Bijan Robinson. It might make me push him over Bryce Young and Stroud, which for my ranks right now don't. So I would start emphasizing the Studley upside of someone like Richardson. But my overall ranks, that's more within a tier because I got Bijan Robinson, then 3 straight, and then all the QBs, basically. So, there's not a lot of change I could do there in Superflex. And it might adjust slightly within tiers. When you got a clear decision, like Young and Stroud, really good, solid quarterback prospects. Young's probably got a better early potential. And then you've got Richardson, who could be the shining golden apple. Yeah, sure. In that specific situation, it encourages me to value that despite my hesitation on it. But outside of that, no. Even if you look at regular Superflex drafts, I basically go all the good quarterbacks, and then I start thinking about the studs of the positions. So it couldn't affect it much. The quarterback position is a little undervalued still, especially in those stud areas. In ADP, for my money, it's risen up a lot over the last couple of years as people recognize it. But my ranks still take quarterbacks at an accelerated rate through the first 2 rounds, should I say. And so I think I've already adjusted relative to ADP for that smaller change. I'm going on about this too much. I don't think there's much change to make. I'm also, I think Will Levis has risen in ADP, but we were already talking about it as a potential late first round pick in Superflex drafts. So we're already kind of there. As long as ADP still has some catching up to do at the value of quarterback, I think this 10 to 12 doesn't change too much. But it's probably going to make your league, probably, not always, because some leagues are different, more in line with that accelerated rate. And you should probably be aware of that. Like, you're not probably going to get Levis in the mid-second. You're probably not going to get Herndon Hooker in the mid-third or wherever he's going right now. Stidman probably isn't a 5th-round pick, probably a 3rd-round pick, because your league mates are going to know or maybe suspect they should emphasize the position more. But my suggestion would be, should already be above that. Or doing that at a higher rate anyway. But it's a really interesting question. Thank you. Scandrick, Pierce had a higher targets per route run. Yeah. 1.4% lower target share than Pickens.
So if you keep going down, I'm not saying Pierce is over Pickens. I'm saying the 50-point pick difference in ADP isn't justified. So all of that, Shadrach, like, if you have been listening to this show for the last, 3 or 4 months, and I know I've seen you in the chat a few times, like, we've been advocating trading George Pickens because people have valued him over where we would at times. So it's
I think I mentioned Pierce a few times before the draft.
Yeah, and so we're quasi agreeing with you, but I think we're saying that it's easier to see the ceiling for Pickens than it is for Pierce. Pierce going, you should just be happy that Pierce is going that far, later than Pickens. If you're looking at it, yeah, if you'd rather, or if you want to make that bet, it's better for you that people are off him. And we've advocated trading Pickens because he's he's good. Like, yeah. I like Pickens. He got a big ceiling, but
I've been in this position too, where you find yourself like, I didn't know I love this guy, but everyone else keeps talking about it. I think we're on the exact same page, but I am gonna pick a bone just to put a thought. Like, you can disagree with it, but a thought in your head. Based on rookie production trends from 2008, which is around about the time I date everything to, because there's a change in the NFL passing era and stuff like that. Based on historical comparisons of how players do in their rookie season, I think that 50-point drop is justified. Again, I think you're exactly right. I think he's a really good pick down there. I think you should be happy to, and I would encourage you to go in on it because it's a decent value bet. But expectations should at least be that far apart. What Pickens did, now I've got a video coming out on it. There is some questions to it. I don't think it's as positive as it might look specifically because of the 17-game season, to be honest. But even adjusted, I think the expectation that Pickens does more for fantasy moving forward should at least be 50 spots different from what Pierce did in his rookie season. That targets per route run number is a really interesting one, but like yards per route run. It's not a magic number. Getting a higher number of it doesn't mean you're more likely or as likely or should be considered as likely to do well. It's relative to the situation they were playing in and how well it compares to the past. Pickens, to your point, he had a higher targets per route run number than Pickens. Pickens had such an abysmal targets per route run number. That is the black mark on his profile. Like hardly any, that is a terrible mark. The fact he's slightly above Pickens means he's still terrible in targets per route run. And he was playing in a different situation. So you adjust for that a little bit and you consider that Pickens was playing on a team with Kenny Pickett. And I'm not saying that was better in Indianapolis either. But he was also playing on a team with Deontay Johnson. I keep saying DeAndre, who had over 140 targets and does that consistently. And Pat Freiermuth, hold your tongue, Pat Freiermuth is good. Actually is significantly more difficult for Pickens. But on that lower targets per route run number, he still earned over 800 yards, which just puts him in a different expectation category. Like that 800 yards matters a lot more in terms of expectation moving forward than the targets per route run number. That's a context describer. The yards are an expectation creator. I guess I just made those terms, but I think the yards are much more dependent on. And if you don't like yards, you can use yards per game, or you can even use yards per route run if you really want. But I think that's again more of a context stat. You can also use receiving yards per team pass attempt if you actually want to use a good stat, or yards per team attempt if you want to include rushing, so you can include the running backs. That's actually a good stat, and both of them prefer Pickens as well. Stats are really interesting, but they do different jobs. Having a higher number in one doesn't necessarily, or a similar number in one doesn't necessarily mean that a player should have similar expectations, because you've got to put the pieces of the puzzle together, create different levels of expectation. And I'm really running too far on this, but I actually think that 50 pick difference is justified based on their rookie performance. And targets per route run or yards per route run is not the way to argue against it. For me, it would probably be arguing that his competition level for targets and targets per route run specifically seems to be sensitive to that, which is also, I've decided all vacated targets truthers are fake, because they would have pointed that out to me across all the arguments I've had. No one's ever pointed out that targets per route run is incredibly target competition sensitive. And that's actually really interesting, which is what made me make videos on it. But anyway, targets don't vacate, but they certainly seem to have an effect on how competitive we can expect players to be in targets per route run. For example, DeAndre Hopkins, Chris Godwin, Devontae Adams, who the players I could find who went on to do well with good yards or bad yards for that matter, had below average targets per route run numbers, all had Hall of Famers in front of them. Like that was the difference between them and the others who had good targets per route run numbers. That's a clear difference maker. Anyway, sorry, I'm running on here, but yeah, I actually think that 50 pick difference is reasonable in terms of expectation moving forward. But I'm also adjusting in my college profiles there, to be perfectly honest. Like I have some bias towards the work I did on them pre-draft. So that could be affecting me too much. But my rookie profiles have continued to be useful after year one, so I still rely on them. I'm ranting now, so I'm moving on. Boots, do you have Rashad Bateman take? Yes, I've had one for about 2 years now. He hasn't shown much. He hasn't shown much of an ability to earn targets at a great rate over a large number of routes. Yeah, he's actually on that lower targets per route run number, which is where we start talking about Marcus Brown. But anyway, I get it, he's been hurt, but his value insulation is fading fast. I really need to pull up that clip the last time I laid this out, because it was before the season ended, I think. Yeah, I kind of predicted a value arc for Rashad Bateman, like after his rookie season. And so far, I've been fairly accurate, which makes me nervous at this point, because his expectation from here, speaking of expectations, should be muted. Like, I think we're hoping for a top 24 season. I don't have all the hopes and dreams I always had for Bateman, but the value arc has been pretty consistent. He was undervalued in his rookie season until the NFL draft. Then he was overvalued because people started thinking he could be like a full top 12 wide receiver, and that he really didn't fit that mold for me in his rookie profile. His rookie season was good, but people went all in on it because of the passing volume increase, which is essentially because of Marcus Brown and Lamar Jackson in that 1 year. There's only 2 teams, by the way, who've ever escalated in passing attempts per game from one season to another as much as Baltimore did that year. I got really lucky with that Marcus Brown take. But just wanted to throw that out there. But they overvalued it and moved him too far up in ADP. And I said it will come down after his sophomore season last year, because I think he has more of a top 36, top 24 range of outcomes because the passing attempts are going to come down. Both of those things happened. I also said that his value would therefore tank because people would be disappointed. In fact, it kind of tanked because of the injury. But, because I can't predict injuries. But to that point, I was actually slightly nervous at the start of the 2022 season because he was operating at such an efficient rate at earning yards on the targets he was able to eke out from that lower passing game that he was overperforming significantly. Now, I do expect he would have regressed if the rest of the 2022 season had continued for him. He couldn't keep doing what he was doing. But again, it's an indication of talent. The fact he was able to do that on limited opportunity is kind of reconfirming to me that he does have significant talent. Anyway, so that value arc happens, and that brings us to now, when I said which would be around about the time I would start trying to add Bateman to my rosters, which I've done this offseason. I've added about 3 shares across the 5 leagues that I have, I think it is. And I think I've acquired him, if I didn't already have. I've got him on about 3 rosters. I do think his range of outcomes is lowered based on his performance. And to your point, his targets per out run was a little disappointing, but I do think Marcus Brown was significant. I do think Mark Andrews is significant to that as well. And I think he's performed admirably on the opportunity, and he's found enough opportunity. I still think he's actually pretty decent. Well, that sounded too weak. I do think he's actually a really good player. And the passing volume is set to change in Baltimore again. I think it's a really good time to add Bateman at his value. But it's a really small margin because the people rostering him bought in, I think, mostly too high. It's like a Jordan Matthews thing where it's like a sunk cost, and they don't want to trade him at his value. They want first-round picks for him, and I wouldn't give one at this point. They went in at the wrong time, and now they have to accept a slightly lower trade-off. I'd give first-round value, but not a first-round pick, ultimately. And if they do, I'd go to the Rondell Moore owner because he actually has a reasonably similar comparable value trend and expectation moving forward. So if I can't get Bateman for like a second, and I don't know, what makes a second worth a first? I don't know, Aaron Jones, Sanders, you can name a few different running backs that would make that worth a first. And there's probably a few tight ends and wide receivers. But I want a first-round value that doesn't have a first in it for Bateman. Then, yeah, I'll definitely do that. And otherwise, I go to the Rondell Moore owner and offer the similar kind of trade. Again, that was more of a rant than an answer. So I'm going to stop talking and let the smart guy talk for a little while. Is that not been my take? That's my memory of it. But yeah, I didn't write it down.
Yeah. And
so I could be wrong.
And again, I think that if you're still on the Bateman hill, then you got to stay. Like now, again, it's similar to when we had the Elijah Moore debate, where like he needs to score points now.
Like, yeah, he does. It's a points bet. Yeah. Very much so. Yeah, good.
So that's and I just picked up Bateman in this startup in the later rounds, in the 13th or something like that. Like, and I don't mind making that bet. He's in that same range, like Bateman and Juju, and I don't mind rostering those players because I think the potential to be a wide receiver too is there.
Yeah. So I think it's very much. I still believe in the player, but you're right. It's really there is no extra year to be like, oh, but an excuse. No, this is it. He's already had too many passes. Injuries aren't players' fault. Don't get me wrong, but it just like they have not also worked as excuses for Jordan Matthews, for Jared Jeudy so far. Like it's been disappointing when players are on this bank, but I still think that upside's still in there. And so if you can get a good trade on it, yeah, I'm in. Ramondre plus 24-second for JT. Yeah, I think JT there. Pretty good JT window, right? Yep. Yeah. Scandrick, Claypool equal Watson. That's kind of how that's the most comparable player. I think he has to prove a player can do that and not be Chase Claypool, because pretty much that's the archetype for what he did in his rookie season. But, I mean, some players are just heavy touchdown guys. How'd you figure that? Because it's almost exact one-to-one comparison in terms of a low percentage of his team's overall routes, a high production window. Literally, Claypool had 79 yards per touchdown. The average is between 150 and 200 yards. and Watson had like 76. Like even his yards per touchdown number is almost identical. His targets per route run number is almost identical, and so is his route percentage is almost identical. So the opportunity he earned at rate relative to the number of his games he was playing is the same as Claypool. So the production mostly came from touchdowns, and it's kind of a 1-to-1 across the things that I think accurately, or more accurately, more often, predict how well players are likely to do in the future. There's a few others on the list, but Claypool's the easier comparison. Kelvin Benjamin also fits, but there you've got to put he himself suffered like a trade after year. I don't know what Benjamin's ultimate upside would have been, but I think he was a similar type of player, produced mostly through touchdowns on limited opportunity, but it looked better because of all the points rolling in. But anyway, yeah. Sorry, that's why those three statistics are my main method of comparing how players produce in their rookie season: route percentage, targets per route run, and yards per touchdown. Claypool even getting more targets than Juju and John. Did Claypool get more targets? I would have to look that up, but he definitely didn't consistently outproduce them in terms of target share of targets.
No. Well, he had a stretch where he was doing well, but like that season, it was like, and I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but it was like 130 targets for
sounds about right
for Deontay Johnson, and like 115 or something like that for Juju, and it was like 105 or 6 for I can
again. It was a good rookie season. The guy's got skills, but we're not playing NFL. We're playing fantasy, and similar things predict the things that help us out for fantasy: consistent long-term volume, essentially. And the Claypools of the world don't typically do it. You could make a Deshaun Jackson comparison, but he doesn't get on that list.
144 for Deontay Johnson, 128 for Juju, and 109 for Claypool. So
I didn't think so. Yeah,
but he had 62 catches for more yards than Juju. Like he didn't have a terrible year, but he also it was so touchdown dependent that that was one of the really obvious, at least to me.
That's one of the things that sticks out on those who do well in terms of just yards or whatever. The one things like half the group has in common, if they struggle to keep that going, is they were heavily dependent on touchdowns. Now that might just be a coincidence, to be fair. It's not like scoring touchdowns makes you unable to catch targets or earn targets. But we have the data pool we have, and that's what they have in common.
But the stability of touchdowns has been there. There's not stability year over year for touchdowns. You just are in the right spot. There are a few guys that are. Devontae Adams is one guy who it seems like he catches touchdowns wherever he goes, but there aren't very many of those.
I think people overrate the volume increases because year 2 players do increase dramatically in volume. But if you look on a per game basis, the increase for top players who break out is like 5 reps per game, not 15.
Right.
And the increase in target share is like 3%, not 10. Right. And the increase in targets per route run is something like 1 to 2%. That's actually a relatively sticky stat, by the way. I was just testing it. It's really interesting. So some of my takes on it have been wrong. That's why I was going back through it to learn a bit more about it. But anyway, the volume increases happen, but the reason the averages look so big are what players like Deontay Johnson, frankly, who go from nothing to everything. Players like Claypool and Watson who get their roles, they marginally increase more often than they dramatically increase. And since they're not going to dramatically increase in routes or targets, although they will increase, and the touchdowns regress down, they can't produce more than what they already did on their rookie. I think that's part of what's going on. But appreciate you, gentlemen. Awesome job as always. Thank you, the freak. SEO. Hi, guys. 12 teams, start 10, 1 QB. In a startup, where would you value 24 and 25 first? Like 4th, 6th round? That seems high. If you're doing a startup right now, next year's like the first 3 picks, like if you draft the 101, the 102, I think you could start drafting those in round 4, sure. Marvin, even in a 1 QB, like even I know Marvin Harris is a bee's knees, and there's going to be a running back too. And a couple of quarterbacks if it's super flex, which this isn't, so it doesn't matter. So yeah, I think you can start in the 4th round, but like not a lot of them should go off the board between 4th and 6th, if that helps. Like again, there's usually the top 3 picks are a different proposition than the rest of the first round. This year was unique because we had like 7 in Superflex or 4 in a non-Superflex that we felt were different kind of levels.
So for a little bit of context, in May's DLF startup ADP, Jackson Smith and Jigba is going at 24th overall. Yeah, and Jordan Addison is going at 46 overall. So you're you're looking probably late 2nd, early 3rd for the first probably 3 or 4 picks.
That's probably fairer. I end up normally not drafting the first few picks, so and that's probably why I'm undervaluing them.
And to me, I would rather get in on those and then just let other people overvalue the rest of the picks, because if you go back to the chance of the chance of hitting like the top 4 or 5 picks.
It's quantum different. Yeah.
So like, why not make those bets rather than? So that's where I'm at. I'm probably end of the 2nd, early 3rd in a 12 team. Yeah, somewhere around there. For the first 3 or 4 picks, and then beyond that, whatever. Have fun, because I think they get overvalued. So.
Minnesota Monster says you got Lance for House straight up, which to me seems
good for you. Lance has got the higher upside.
Bitcoin references are fun. AR had the 2nd most deep attempts in the SEC, 21 more than Bryce.
Oh no, I didn't. I actually lost their booty to Bitcoin. No, I actually did. I did well because I bought in very minimally right before things started coming back from the COVID crash, and paid for a vacation. It was awesome. It was like I put in like $400. I made like $6,000. We went on vacation. I didn't have to worry about anything. It was awesome, and that was it.
Yeah, Skandrick. I'm assuming that's in a
Thanks,
single
Dak
season.
Prescott.
What I do know is AR threw the ball less than a full season from any other conference or any other.
Yeah, you only had like
350 is his total career attempts.
Yeah, or 390, I think, is career. But
okay. Cody Jacobson. Yeah, man, I'm excited for mini camps in a couple weeks. I'm excited. I get excited. Like I say, it's intoxicating anti-calorie news, but I do enjoy it. It'd be hard to keep doing this if you didn't enjoy it. I use the SEC to weed out the noise. And that's fair. It's also fair to compare players from a similar conference, to be fair. Yeah. Who are your guys' favorite mid-2nd round guys? Josh Downs. Bigsby's kind of an early 3rd, but I'll throw him in there. Laporta, the tight ends. Yeah.
You know who's going in the mid-2nd who shouldn't be is Rashee Rice.
That's a good one.
And I also like Roschon Johnson. He's probably back toward the back end of the 2nd, but I like.
Is he really? Johnson. I would have thought that was too early. He would have been early 2nd. Oh,
well, if he is early 2nd, I'm still happy with him there. But
yeah, I thought he was in that thick running back tier at the end of the 1st or the start of the 2nd, but maybe not. Great consistent content. Appreciate you. Randy, would you go Burks and Goddard for Andrews?
I'd rather have. I'd rather have Andrews.
Team league.
I'd rather have Andrews. I think he gives you the positional advantage.
He does. And Goddard's just like a placeholder for less than Andrews.
Goddard's good, but yeah.
It's more in a 14 team. The upside with Burks or top 24. Like I think more depth, less stud. It's fine, but Zach's not wrong. Andrews is probably the preferred side. Spot 498. How would you construct your roster if no rebuilding? Did we go through this? rebuilding 12-team non-tight end.
Yeah, I think we did.
Yeah, we had this one.
How do you value? How do you value picks compared to a regular 12-team Superflex? So one quarterback picks are devalued. Like, for example, Spock, like this class in Superflex, we were really interested in the top 7. So you're interested in Bijan, Richardson, Young, Stroud, Addison, and Jigba, Gibbs. Like that's in a one quarterback, you're interested in Bijan, Gibbs, Addison, JSN. So all of a sudden, it's almost like it's half. So like,
and it's going to be class dependent to your point. Like it was different last year than it'll be next year as well. As to how many tier breakers do you have, but it shrinks them because the quarterbacks suddenly don't matter.
Yep.
Yeah. Team A Chain or Charbonnet? I'm A Chain. It's the simple answer. Yeah. Charbonnet is still kind of ahead of him from what I've seen, and
that's wild to me. Like, I am in on the Ken Walker hate as much as anybody, but he's still a really good runner, and that's a kind of a really congested backfield. And not that Miami isn't a congested backfield, but I think A-Chain has a pretty clear path to receiving work.
So most of our team like arguing that we don't want congested backfields, but then when Ken Walker gets congested, it's like, oh no, we want his second. Yeah. Jesse, where would you start taking the top tight ends in a 12-team start 9 Superflex startup where you have to start 2 tight ends with 0.5 tight end premium? Kelsey and Andrews are probably top 2 round picks in that format. Yeah. Andrew, it's actually a preference thing. Like Andrews is ahead of Kelsey in some dynasty rankers in Superflex. I know because I look at their ranks fairly regularly. Some actually still have Pitts in there too. Kelsey has mostly fallen to 2. Anyway, sorry. Something I was noticing. I was just thinking drafting Kelsey in the first round of a Superflex startup is a really tough thing to do.
Yeah.
So I think they start in the second round at this point.
Yep. Yeah. No, I agree with you because I think you've got that kind of glut of quarterbacks. So you got up at the top, you got Mahomes, Allen, Hurts, and then people are throwing in like Burrow, Herbert, Lamar Jackson, Lawrence, Fields, and then you've still got your Jefferson and Chase, and then you've got Bijan. So there's not really much room in the top 12 there for tight ends even. So I think you're right. I think you're starting in the second round, probably, early to mid second. Like I'd love a startup where I could get either a top quarterback and then pair him with Kelsey or Andrews, or end up with like Jefferson, Kelsey, Jefferson, Andrews, like that. Man, I'm okay with that.
According to Superflex ADP, which I just downloaded because I got to write my article tonight, Kyle Pitts is the first tight end off the board, 31st overall. So we're above, which is fine. I mean, that's what you want to do to get your guy. Kelsey is going in the 3rd round as well at 33. Andrews goes in the 4th round, 44th overall. I would like to be a little ahead on all of those picks, so that's where I would start.
And especially with you have to start 2, and you get a premium for receptions. So
that would actually,
if you get, and man, I would almost go 2nd, 3rd round, boom, boom, like and just have that positional advantage. You don't have to worry about it. You've taken 2 of the top 3, and nobody else can do a thing about it.
And if I miss him, I'm just going to take Pat Fairmouth.
I don't hate that.
Kendrick, I'm very confused. So Watson's profile is similar to Chase Claypool because of touchdown on low volume, but Watson was the team's first option. Claypool was the team's 3rd.
He wasn't. He was the team's first option after everyone got hurt.
Yeah, Romeo Doubs was the team's first option when they were both on the field. When Romeo Doubs got injured, Watson started increasing in his overall opportunities, but there were limited opportunities. He was brought on the field very specifically to run down the field and catch touchdowns, which he does very, very, very well. He's got skill. And again, I'll point out I'm higher than him. I mean, I open the freaking thing up. I'm going to read the stats to you. Like, I'm not wrong on this. He had 12% of the team's overall routes. So if you take the number of routes ran on that team, he ran a route on 12% of those overall routes. He had 76, if memory serves, it's very close to that, yards per touchdown. The average is between 150 and 200. So that's like a touchdown twice as often as he should have. Again, because he was being specifically employed in that role. What else did he have?
Fewer targets than Robert Tonyan. Yes. Oh, sorry. I didn't know what we were talking about.
I'm going to bring both of them up.
He had fewer targets.
Watson had 76 yards per touchdown. Claypool had 79 yards per touchdown. Both of them... Actually, Chase Claypool outproduced him in points per game. He had 13 points per game. Christian Watson had 11 points per game. Christian Watson had 11% target share per game, whereas Chase Claypool had 16% targets per game. But that 3% makes them closer to each other than all the other players who produced a similar number of yards or a similar number of points per game for that matter. Chase Claypool also ran more routes per game, 27 routes per game versus 19 routes per game. They were both targeted similar rates on those routes that they ran, however. Christian Watson had 23 targets per route, whereas Chase Claypool had 24 targets per route. Christian Watson had 12.4% of route percentage, and Chase Claypool had 13.7%. The three key indicators on players that have some level of success predicting how well players are going to go forward outside of the overall yards production are route percentage, target rate, and yards per touchdown, all of which they're all very similar. Again, 76 to 79, 23 to 24, and 12% to 13%. If you think either of those three numbers have a drastic difference from each other, or if you ever think I'm making numbers up when I say players have similar numbers again, just don't listen, guy. Like, yes, they were very similar across these three numbers, and these three numbers seem to have some relevance in describing their roles and how well they are likely to go forward. Like, I'm not making it up. They are very similar in terms of their route percentage, their targeted rate, and their overall touchdown rate on the yards that they produce. Yes, one was a wide receiver whatever, and one was a wide receiver whatever in points per game, but I specifically wasn't talking about their points per game rank on their overall team, because it doesn't essentially matter. For at least for what I'm talking about, how they were producing and how likely they are to continue to produce that way in year two. Again, Christian Watson was pretty good. He should do pretty good next year. Without Aaron Rodgers, I think that's probably what it'll be blamed on, but he's not going to produce 76 yards per touchdown again. And he has to escalate in volume. Like, he has to double his volume. And most volume increases are like 5% on players that do exceptionally well, not doubling their route percentages. And if we're talking about rates and talking about, well, he was injured, then why are we talking about rates? We should be talking about overall numbers, which goes back to his yards earned or his overall routes, which again, compare him more to Claypool. Like, if we're talking about rates, that's meant to adjust for the time that he missed. By the way, Treylon Burks, who also missed a similar amount of time in his rookie season, had 400 yards per touchdown. He underproduced in touchdown while also earning a target and around 20% of his overall routes run and higher overall route percentage. Like, Treylon Burks compares better to a player that's more likely to have that very small increase, 5% in overall route percentage, and excel over what he did in year one than Christian Watson. And they're all valued in a pretty similar range. Sorry, I'm just recreating my video at this point. But like, those are the three numbers I'm talking about. And they're all relative. They're within a percentage point of each other across the three statistics I was comparing them to. It's frustrating. Like, they're almost identical across those three numbers. And those are the ones I was talking about. If I already have Mahomes and Watson, is it worth adding Watson to move up to Allen, Hurts, or Herbert, or just keep Watson and the assets? Rest of the team is also solid to contend and have lots of wide receiver depth. If you have Watson, Allen, and Hurts, pretty thick. No, you have Mahomes and Watson. Is it worth adding Watson? And no, Dynasty Outhouse would say no. He would say you don't need a third QB even if you don't have Mahomes.
Well, no, he's saying add something to Watson
to
move
sorry,
up to
I'm
Allen,
really
Hurts, or Herbert. Yeah, I would. I mean,
yeah,
I'd rather have the sure thing top 4 quarterback than hopefully he's a top 5 quarterback. Like,
yeah, I think it's add what, but I think most things you could add would probably be a reasonable. Yeah, you're moving up into an entirely different tier there. Again, Mahomes and Allen have no value comparisons, so there's relatively little you could add that would be too much. So yeah, worth it. D-Brags, not sure if you have big Devi guys. I'm not, to be honest, but I was considering trying it for the first time. How does Devi change your draft strategy for typical leagues? I don't play it a lot. I am somewhat familiar. I recommend you check out. I think you were going to do that bit actually because you've got the hookups.
Oh no, I like so.
Ken,
Kane, like Kane, Fasel, Debbie Kane, the Campus to Canton guys, like that. That's where I go for Debbie. And hold on, you're gonna make me.
Campus to Canton, right?
Well, yeah, Campus to Canton, but also with Shane, with Kane, Fasel is Shane Hallam, who's also just fantastic as a Devi guy. He does draft countdown, the Devi marketplace with Kane Fasel. So like those are my go-to is Shane Hallam and Kane Fasel with the Devi marketplace, and then the Campus Canton guys, Felix Sharp in that group. As far as approaching Devi and the typical strategy, your rookie drafts will be depleted because you have a Devi draft. The problem with that is we don't know anything about what's happening with rookies in the NFL, which means trying to predict them 4 years out means we know less. Also, Travis May. Like, pay attention to Travis May. Like, he's about as good at that as anybody.
I was just trying to figure out if, with a new job he's taken on, Travis isn't making a lot of content, putting a lot of takes out on Devi guys. But when he does, you should read him. So yeah, at Travis,
just get in his DMs and be like, Travis, hey, what do you think about this guy? He likes that.
Yeah. Yeah, Campus Canton, Travis May are the people I would listen to. I think John Bosch, again, doesn't make a lot of content, but I still think he is very well aware of the Devi scene because he plays in a lot of different types of leagues. And he's someone I listen to on.
I'm telling you, like Shane Hallam at Shane P. Hallam. Like he's brilliant, and he does well. So all of the draft nicks that do their like mock drafts and try to predict how the draft is going to go, Shane beats them, and he's a Devi guy. So like if you're going to listen to somebody, Shane is a really good. He and Kane do a excellent job.
Yeah, I follow Shane. It's just checking.
You should. Yeah, absolutely.
Trey Cobb, I took A-Chain at 110. According to ADP, you took him too far, but that seems fine to me. Still got Kincaid at 201. Yeah, I was happy. Yeah, I think you probably should be. Yeah, I like those two guys in that range. Watson, a stud. Last time we saw him play with that rust, he certainly was a fantasy stud. Yeah, I hear you, but nah, Watson actually like that. I think it's definitely within his range of outcomes for sure. I'm not a big quarterback guy. I'm very much a what have they done lately. I don't see is there a reason Watson would not be what he was before?
I think
been a lot of injury.
They're talking Christian Watson, not.
Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah.
They're saying that everything that you just said is wrong, Peter. All.
Okay. Yeah. I hope so.
I buy that. Peter,
I should just describe the way he produced points. He produced them on a lot of deep. He's very, very good at it. I would agree. That's punishing Watson for getting it. No, it's not. It's not. Don't talk to me about rates if you want to take away because of injuries. Like that's what rates adjust for. That's what they're meant to adjust for. And I looked across. I've had this conversation too many times. I've literally ran the numbers and put them out on Twitter, and I think it was directly at you. And it's getting frustrating telling you the same thing over and over again. Like I think you directly asked me, so I pulled up my database and I literally filtered for your criteria of what was playing enough snaps per game. And he played more games across the thresholds that you set than Treylon Burks, and still earned a below average route percentage, a below average number of the team's overall opportunity. He was very, very good on it because he's a very, very talented player. How much of that Was Aaron Rodgers is probably not the argument I make, because I think a lot of it was Christian Watson. I think he's very talented at it, but I do think that's a factor as well to consider. But yeah, and again, all of it happened not just because of his injuries. When he wasn't injured, but Romeo Doubs was still there, Romeo Doubs got the routes, and I think that's something to consider. That's all. To be honest, we knew Claypool wasn't it. I mean, I'm glad you did, because I was arguing with someone else the exact same way about Claypool at the time. So, yeah. I wasn't talking about points per game. No, and I wasn't. You were defining him as a wide receiver 1 based on his overall production relative to the other players, though, right? That's how he was the 1, and Watson was the 1, and Claypool was the 3, right? Any 2023 projections? I actually started on them, but my projections are actually based on ranks and ADP lately, because I find that a bit. I want to get more use out of projections and my guesses, because that's essentially what projections are when you get into it on the way the season's going to shake out. So I try to project what should happen if ADP was right, and then look for things that are slightly different. I started to share them in Discord a little bit, but they're not publicly available yet. Also, not Watson, man, but watch the tape. I won't, just to be clear. I wouldn't get any value out of it, not because I don't think it's valuable for others. Brought up points for Watson is number 1, Reed Cummings scares me. I don't think Reed should scare you too much. But he's not able to outproduce his production last year. Trying to see what part would contradict me. No reason he's not able to. Well, there's a few reasons. That he has to either gain he has to significantly increase in volume in terms of targets and the rate of targets and the rate of routes he earns, which isn't typical for players entering in their second year. He's also just lost the best supplier of the ball he could possibly have, especially for that particular role. Romeo Doubs will be back healthy, who was outproducing him at earning a targets opportunity and actually performing them on a yards basis. When they were last time they were both healthy and on the field. Now Watson has the draft capital over him, to be clear, so I think Watson probably should still continue to be the 1, but Doubs is going to eat in a little bit, especially for a player who has to escalate in terms of the rate at which he's earning volume. So there are some concerns, because he's probably going to reduce in touchdowns just based on touchdown regression. Not all the way to 200 yards. Like, he's a very effective touchdown producer, so he's probably going to still be. But he's going to have to compensate for that with earning excessive, a distinct increase in volume, so he can get more targets and yards, essentially, instead of touchdowns. And the reason to expect that it would be difficult to do that is very few players escalate that far in volume after establishing that much of a role through their rookie season. And again, this team situation is more rough. And not that I'm the guy who's going to make the argument for quarterback, but still. Sorry, I'm fast talking because I've talked about it too much, and I'm not allowed to keep Zach here till 2. And if you're projecting Doubs as lead, I will project what ADP says, again, to how my projections work, and Watson's going to be above Doubs. All I'm saying is that is a reason to suspect that his limited route percentage wasn't just because of injuries, because when they were both on the field and healthy, and again, there's an argument that Watson developed into the role because he was a more raw college prospect with higher draft capital. That's a fair assessment as well, but it is a question. It is a reason to suspect it might be more difficult for him to sustain what would it take? It would take a 10% increase in route percentage, or what did we say his target share was? 13-14%, a 10% increase in target share for him to maintain or increase in production. And that's if the team has as many yards and touch, which it won't without Rodgers. Like, there's a lot of reasons to suspect he won't produce as well, but that doesn't mean he won't produce well. He's a talented player. I just don't think that exponential growth into a top 12 wide receiver. I think there's a lot of questions around that. Definitely respect what you're saying. Love your guys' channel. Respect. Yeah, it's all good, man. And I appreciate you. Disagreeing with Watson. And you're allowed to. Right now, his ADP, even for me, my ranks are a little higher on him than ADP are. So, like, speaking of value bets, I don't think it's wrong to like him. I'm just, again, as far as I see, my unpaid job is to describe questions, which questions are relevant to ask. And I think those are relevant questions. Not saying they're going to be definitive because I don't know the future. What might be too vague? Point projections, respectfully. What might have been too vague? Point projections, respectively. I don't get that one.
You already answered this. This is the second part of do you have projections?
Yes, I do. They're not out yet. And yeah, I project all of it. Equity loan. It was a small sample, but Jerry Jeudy finished very strong last 5 games. Yeah, he's my odds-on favorite to be the split take guy this offseason. I have been bullish based on his pedigree from this year. In his sample size, too small for me to be so. Thanks, guys. Jerry Jeudy's on a really interesting list. Players who produced 800 yards, just as a random thing to filter for, and disappointed, like only one top 24 season. But that list is Justin Blackmon, who left the league by year 2, Jordan Matthews, who got Carson Wentz, and I think that's the thing, then a trade and injuries abound, and then Jerry Jeudy. Like, that's not a miss list to me. That's 2 guys with a lot of questions, and then Jerry Jeudy, who still has questions. So, yeah, it's a really interesting buy opportunity. But again, that's why I kind of like pointing it out for Pickett. Like, he doesn't have to blow up this year to still have value by the time he's going into his 3rd year, because we're going to remember he did pretty well that one time, and he has pretty good pedigree and stuff like that. And PFS going to support the Jeudy case, I think. So that's going to help out for his value, at least. Yes, per route, do adjust for injury. Thank you. And led his team in all of them. Yes. Well, no, Romeo Doubs had more opportunity. Unless we're talking about yards per touchdown. And again, it's literally distinct. Like, I lined them up, and I think it was with you again, where I lined up, you've got Romeo Doubs dominating, and then Christian Watson, and it's literally when Doubs' stats disappear, Watson's stats
but Peter,
up.
that was at the end of the season, and it's the last thing we saw, so that's the only thing that matters.
It also could be that he developed into the role, and it's just a coincidence. To be fair, this is all potentially... So I want to leave that door open.
All I know is that Robert Tonyan is elite because he had more targets.
He did do pretty well that year in touchdowns too, to be fair. Also, Burks outright missed games, which he did, which helps versus coming out.
But he also missed games where he was in games and came out too.
That's why I filtered for games where he didn't play over 70% of the snaps in that game. So coming out, like, if you're playing that many, like that's the threshold we came up for adjusting for that. And they were better, but they weren't great. Next subject, any QBs super flex. And we're not applying all those filters to Claypool's season or Calvin Benjamin's season because we're hyper focusing on the guy we want to be better in comparison, which is not a great way of starting the question. Next subject, any QBs I'm super flex, like sleepers or must roster. And what's your reason? So guys are specifically targeting this year, just in general. I think Treylon Burks is on my list for every rant I've just issued. Aaron Jones I like at the running back position in general. Josh Downs as far as rookie picks. Like I want to be down with Downs. Despite everything we just said about the team situation. Pat Freiermuth, I haven't done my breakout arts yet, which is where I really pick up the guys I want to hyper-focus this year. But that's the next after projection, so I have better answers after that. And again, I'm writing up that ADP versus rank series for DLF ADP, where we're literally trying to come up with who's better. Kyler Murray and Lamar Jackson and Superflex have stood out for me this offseason as well in general. Those are guys I want to invest, but obviously Kyler Murray's not a this year player. Okay. Gavin, thoughts on Goddard? I didn't realize he hasn't finished better than tight end 10. Overall, probably on a per game, I'm guessing he did better than that. But I don't see how his ceiling gets any higher and concerned about his floor with the addition of Swift and progress of Smith. Anyway. Goddard's a really good tight end. He should be in the TJ Hawkinson conversation of that middle class of tight end who's more proven even than Pat Freiermuth, who I also think should be in there. But yeah, I don't think he has the Andrews, the Kittle, or the Kelsey upside because almost no one does. It's been a minute since we had a middle class of Jason Witten and Antonio Gates and Hernandez. And I think we're struggling with what to do with it because it doesn't provide a positional advantage, like Zach always talks about with Kelsey and Andrews. But in Dynasty, where there's a thinner waiver wire, I think there's some thick value to having those guys on your team. But that, like to your point, they're top 12 guys, not top 2 guys.
So I think, and Peter, you mentioned this kind of quickly, but Gavin, I think the thing you're missing with Goddard and most tight ends is they have a fairly good chance of missing games. And so if you're looking at tight ends and you're looking especially at the top tight ends that produce, you probably want to look at it per game rather than overall. And so he finished as the tight end 5 last year per game. So again, it's not like, and it's that middle, like what Peter said, that middle class of tight end, that Hawkinson, Goddard, Freiermuth is in there, Ertz is in there, but he's older at this point. Like there's that kind of group of guys that like they're fine, they're good.
I tell you what, I think thinking about tight end like quarterback is probably the way to go. You've got Allen and you've got Mahomes and you've maybe got Lamar Jackson, the Kittles of the world, and then you've got Tannehill and Cousins, and they're great. And they'll finish top 5, top 2, top 1 in particular weeks, and you're pretty happy with them. And that's that tier, you know?
Yep.
Yeah. Shout out to Justin Blackman. Yeah, I was re-looking him up because I thought it's just been a minute. Hope he's doing all right. I couldn't find any new information. Could you all imagine if CH was RB6, like wasn't a fluke, like back early in season, comes out of the gate swinging? Tell you what, I've ended myself picking up CAH because he's so deep down. But yeah, it's probably McKinnon and Pacheco for 2023. But yeah, could not imagine. And you guys remember when Javonte and Swift were Dynasty 2 and 3? Yeah, the turnover in the top 12 of running backs is insane, which, again, heads up to Nick Chubb, who's just perpetually been in there for good reasons, and Saquon Barkley and CMC. Like, don't undervalue them just because they're old, even though their value's gone, to be fair. I'm fine with comparing on a per routes 1-to-1 with those guys, but the context of Watson running less routes will always come up as if the issue is having him. The issue was him not earning them versus him getting injured often. Yeah, because he didn't understand the rate at which he was earning routes on a per game seemed to be directly affected by the availability of Romeo Dubs for a start, but also just when he wasn't injured. He was earning them at a higher rate. When, obviously, you would earn them at a higher rate when you're not injured, but not the same rate that most breakouts do following into year 2. Did he get it? I think he hit that 800-yard list, or he's at least over 600, which is the next threshold of significance. He had a pretty good rookie season, touchdowns or no touchdowns. Love the hair, by the way, Pete. Thanks. I did finally sit down and let someone cut it. Appreciate that. If Purdy is not starting QB for the Niners, I think it's Lance. And next year, do you guys still put Kittle and Andrews and Kelsey in the top tier? I do. I kind of lean away from the influence of the quarterback, although it definitely is there, specifically in touchdowns, actually, at least. But I think good players can do well in worse situations. Not bad, but worse situations. And Shanahan kind of has a way of making the offense hum. Although I don't want to put too much stock in the coaching narrative either. But no, I'll bet on talent. I hope situations change if that happens. That's not going to affect me too much. I think Lance is a bigger concern for both because, again, rushing QBs, again, I take a play away every time they run from one or the other positions. Zach, do you have a great deal of different expectation?
No, I mean, it's pretty similar to what you're saying. I mean, like Kittle's the great thing about Kittle is he is a yards after catch tight end, which is very fun. So, even if you... Yes, I still think he's a top 3. I mean, he's obviously below those other 2, but he's a top 3. And I mean, last year he was the tight end 2 points per game. Like he's good.
Yeah. Speaking of games that shouldn't count, like he was brought in to block a lot, which affected his per game.
Well, and he was injured at the beginning. Yeah, he was injured at the beginning of the season, and Ross Dwelly was running his route. So like Forgive me if I don't take too much. Like,
I was going to ask that as a student of the actual play of the game. Like, it keeps striking me as odd. He was injured, so he only blocked. I would imagine blocking is a more dangerous thing to do. Is it not?
Well, I mean, I don't know exactly. I don't know
injured.
exactly what his injury is, but like I know that I like if you get like soft tissue leg injuries and it's the stop start going. So if you're not like if you're pass blocking, you're
That's
not
a fair point. The injury
like,
would probably
So.
I just imagine.
But again, I don't know.
Like
I'm
a
not
gladiator pit with someone trying. But weird. Would you sell Goddard for any of the following plus a second? Fairmouth, Kincaid, Waller, Schultz, and Jay Johnson, Saints, or Chig. I know a lot of people like Chig. Fairmouth, I would. I'd take Fairmouth in a second. Kincaid, and I'd probably even at that point. And Waller should be worth less than that. Which is why he's interesting. So Fairmouth for sure, Kincaid maybe, and then
that's pretty much where we're at.
Schultz still in the league. Look at that. Look at him go after all those targets earned, and not last three, but others. That's 1, 2, 3.
Fair enough. Like I like Waller, but I don't think you have to pay that for Waller. Like I don't think. I think you should get more than a second back with Waller if you're giving. I think Goddard. You get years, even though Waller has a chance to be, one of those same tier as Goddard. But
I actually agree with this take. I don't know much about Shake, but Dolchich, whose name I don't say right. Yeah, for sure. Kittle's numbers did spike with Purdy. That is why I'm asking. That's all. Splits, but he was also mistresses.
Well, and he was also injured early. The kind of the confluence of Purdy coming in and Kittle getting healthy helped. He's also been really good with everybody he's played with. But.
Yeah. Again, Kittle. Not that he's unprone to down times again, because he does get injured and yet still play, which can be really difficult as a fantasy player. But he produces touchdowns and yards after catch, which is like potentially a way of insulating him from that. The other thing is, I think it's underrated that I think the offense wants to run through Kittle. That's why Debo did so well over Ayuk, and Ayuk did well when Debo wasn't there and had to adopt more of that role. I think it runs right through the heart of that offense. That's where the engine of it is. And Kittle sits at the center of it when healthy. But, we'll have to see. We've literally never seen them all play healthy at the same time for a significant period of games. And split takes, like I say, are always kind of fickle.
That's the one. Pete.
Yes.
Look over there.